I saw that. Congratulations.
Can you believe it? In 2 days.
She said there were 40 people that came to.
Call
It was
the
like
meeting to
my
order.
Glendale, there were 40 people that came to.
Thank you.
7:03. First order on the, or I should say second order on the agenda is the minutes from May 23rd. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of, what did you say?
May 23rd.
May 23rd.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
That was all good.
Okay, you want to vote?
Yep, all in favor?
All in favor?
Yep.
That passes 4-0. Okay, chair report. Tomorrow night is the high school graduation, which I think a number of us will be there, which is very exciting. Be my first time ever going, and so that's awesome. And then the only other thing that I had was just to let everybody know that to fill Dawn Capello's position, there are 4 candidates that are going for the open position. That is Josh Morse, Brian Sanders, John Skogstrom, and myself. And they'll be appointed. Somebody will be appointed at the joint school committee Board of Selectmen meeting on June 18th at the Board of Selectmen meeting at 7 or whenever they put it on the agenda. And I just wanted to let everybody know that because I'm also going for it, we're still trying to figure things out, but no matter what, I'm recusing myself from the voting. And that's all I have for the chairperson's report. Superintendent's report?
Yes. So this has been a busy and exciting week where we get to celebrate our seniors, and tomorrow night is exciting because it's graduation, so congratulations to the class of 2019. Having attended the Sports Awards night on Tuesday, the Senior Awards night on Wednesday, I'm always so impressed with the accomplishments of our students that we graduate at Maynard High School. I wish them good luck in their future, and I'm confident that they will be the leaders of tomorrow. In addition to that report, I also wanted to talk about the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom have asked us to advocate for funding at the state level. And the conference committee is currently considering funding the level of circuit breaker, which covers extraordinary special education expenses. The House version appropriation is $328 million, while the Senate version fully funded the circuit breaker at $345 million. My colleagues in Mass have prepared a draft letter, and I've used that to help prepare the following letter that I will be sending to the Senate Ways and Means members to advocate for Senate funding, for the Senate funding level, which is the higher level of the two. After we do this, we may want to contact our Representative Hogan and Senator Eldridge just to let them know that we would like them to support that as well, but I'd like to read the letter to you if that's okay. And it's to the Chairman of the Senate Ways and Means, Honorable Michael Rodriguez, the Honorable Cindy Friedman, and the Honorable Horacio Di Macedo. Thank you very much for your strong commitment to students with special needs in the House and Senate versions of the fiscal year 2020 budget. Your continued support for state's special education circuit breaker account 7061-0012 means the world to over 10,000 students with special needs and their families and teachers. I am incredibly proud to join with them to offer my thanks and recognition for all that you and your colleagues in the legislature continue to do to support the special education community in Massachusetts. As the conference committee sets out to begin its deliberations, I write today to respectfully ask that you continue supporting increased funding for the special education circuit breaker account by funding this important line item at the Senate appropriation of $345,154,803 in the conference committee budget. This funding is essentially a form of local aid to cities and towns, and this request and the Senate appropriation closely parallels fully funding the circuit breaker account in fiscal year 20 and reimburse communities at the 75% level required by law. Thank you very much again for always working to understand the challenges faced every day by children with special needs and for your tremendous commitment and to supporting those needs. I truly appreciate all of your efforts and all of the efforts of your colleagues. So I will be sending that letter. I wanted to share that.
Could you also send it to Kate and Jamie?
We
Just
can,
so that
yes.
they've got the hard copy. That'd be great.
So, yeah, right now, while it's in the Ways and Means Committee, I want to make sure they get it, but then obviously we also want our representative and senator to know how we feel about that. And I thought that you would strongly support that as well.
Absolutely. Great,
And
thank
that's
you.
my superintendent's report.
Okay. Staff retirement, student representative report.
Hello. Sorry I couldn't make it last meeting. I was in the production of Godspell. But I was delivered your card that you all had signed for me during the intermission of the performance, and it was a rough night, so the card really meant a lot to me, so I just wanted to say thank you.
It was a great show, even though you were having a rough time, perhaps.
It was really fun. It was really fun in the end, though. So I just wanted to acknowledge Talal again, for anyone who hasn't been here. He's the replacement for AJ as a student council or student representative of the school committee. So I just wanted to acknowledge him once more. And this is our first meeting without our founding father, AJ, so he will be sorely missed. You can come closer. So just the first thing, the freshmen right now actually are pulling off a spring fling at the high school for grades 6 through 8. And it's located in the high school caf, so I'm sure they're going to be partying all night long.
On Tuesday, we had a sports banquet, so many of our great athletes were recognized there, so that actually went pretty well.
As someone had alluded to earlier, last night was the senior awards night, so all of our seniors were recognized for their amazing accomplishments, and then of course their graduation is tomorrow. Also soon, next week is the start of finals, so at Maynard High we'll have basically half of a normal day on Monday, and then that'll transition into our first final, the second half of the day, and then the rest of the week will be finals, two classes each day, and then Friday ending with makeup exams.
We had an Alice drill around a week ago, and that went pretty successful. So we evacuated the building, then we went to Alumni Field, and that actually went pretty well. And this past Tuesday, we had an SAT prep class by a company by Cotter Simplified, and they actually showed some helpful math tricks that me and Patty even went to. So yeah, so I said that was actually worth it. So yeah.
That's it for our report. Does anyone have any questions?
I
Yes.
do. So, years past, we used to have an SAT sort of tutoring, sort of prep, like it went for like 8 weeks or something like that. Do we do anything like that now, or?
No.
Okay. Would that be helpful if we could reinstitute it?
I think
Yeah,
so.
that would be pretty
Yeah.
helpful.
I know guidance counselors have recommended SAT prep classes, along with the prep class that was held at MHS this past week. He had recommended their own prep class, and that's a summer one to prepare for the fall exams.
So I think one of the challenges the last time was when to have it, with all the sports and activities after school and that kind of thing. So do you guys have any recommendations?
Like something maybe on the weekend could work, because a lot of people are kind of free, like maybe in the early morning.
Okay.
So things like that.
A
could-
Saturday
Yeah.
morning might be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and what guidance did, they sent out a survey to all the students to just figure out what day and time works best for everyone. So that would be another solution.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
How are you feeling about finals?
I don't really like finals,
Being honest.
but I guess I gotta take them, so maybe I'll get it done.
Well, good luck,
Thank
both
you.
of you. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
I imagine we will not see you in the summer.
Maybe we'll pop in. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Staff retirement recognition.
So the school committee mentioned at a previous meeting that they wanted to recognize the dedication of our retirees at a public meeting and provide a small token of our appreciation for their dedication and commitment to the Maynard Public Schools. We invited the 5 retirees who are retiring at the end of this year to attend tonight, but they all live a pretty far distance away, so they weren't able to attend. We also will be inviting mid-year retirees next fall, because we thought, that wouldn't be appropriate now, because they'll still be coming back for a while. But we will honor them tonight. I'll read the list of names. And this was what we're getting them. It's Master Teacher, Develop, Support, and Honor, and it's a golden apple that's inscribed with their name, and it says, "Thank you for your service to the Maynard Public Schools."
Very sweet.
So that is what the school committee got our retiring teachers. And the retiring teachers at the end of this year are Mary Ferranti, Roseanne Lambert, Lisa McLean, John Malika, and Lynn Meridian.
They will all be sorely missed.
Yes.
sure will.
Amazing teachers, educators.
Even though they're not here, I just want to give them a round of applause for their service.
Thank you, Bob.
All right.
Now on to the principal panel. They're doing the dual model.
All right,
Can we
you might
maybe
give me the
start
setup. Dan's going to set up the...
Okay.
yeah,
Can we maybe start with the 4 of you
introducing yourself?
Sure. Chuck Karagianis. I'm the principal for curriculum, instruction, and assessment at the high school.
Kevin Caruso, the principal of leadership and operations and athletic director at the high school.
Mike Barth, I'm principal of curriculum at Fowler School.
And I'm Dan Costello, principal of leadership and operations here at Fowler and slide master.
I believe we made some copies of the PowerPoint in the back, correct, Colleen? So some people should have copies of the PowerPoint as well.
Oh, and before we start, I just wanted to let everybody know that we'll have a short question and answer time frame after this for any of the community members that might have a question.
Committee members?
Oh, yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. We're here to discuss the principal's perspective for the school committee on having 2 principals in each building. Obviously, our colleagues from Green Meadow are not here this evening, but we're very happy to be able to talk about what we see as a very strong model, very successful model, and a very effective model for the kids and the teachers here in Maynard. So we have 3 main points that we want to make this evening. We're going to share with you the results of a staff survey that was taken this year that shows a great deal of support and shows improvement overall in the perception on behalf of the staff of the principal model. We're very proud of that. We want to talk to you for a minute about how candidates for principal see the model. And this is exceptionally important right now as Green Meadow is in the midst of a search for a principal. The model itself is a very strong draw. And then thirdly, we want to share some examples of the way that this model is effective and allows us to do our jobs well and have what we think was a pretty good year. And yes, I'm changing the slide with my phone.
Technology.
So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck at the high school to talk about kind of the distinctions between the jobs and the job descriptions.
Thanks, Dan. You can see on the slide that one way to look at the model is to think of the principal of leadership and operations as the principal for the kids, and the principal of curriculum instruction assessment as the principal of the teachers. Having said that, in broad terms, on a practical level, there's overlap on a regular basis. You don't assess teachers without student input. People are out of the building for various reasons, and if Kevin is out of the building and a student has an issue, I'm the principal for students. And fortunately, I have quite a bit of experience in that realm, so it's not like, oh gosh, what do I do with this student right now? It's experience that I do have. We've also learned that, and I think the same is true at the Fowler School, that there are just certain areas that one of us has more facility with, and rather than say, gee, this kind of is more in the realm specifically of leadership and operations, if it's something that I do well and have a good skill set for, we'll sort of swap off some duties as well. I do need to note that at the high school, we really have 1.5 administrators, because Kevin also assumes the duties of athletic director. And a simple acknowledgement to that is, my willingness and Kevin's willingness to do what needs to be done in the moment. If Kevin is really tied up with things related to athletics, which can happen at the strangest times, I know it doesn't maybe sound like much, but if it's a questionable weather day and there are a bunch of sports scheduled and phone calls and emails start flying back and forth about, will the game be on, will the game be off, what about the buses, what about dismissing the kids? I mean, that can tie Kevin down for an hour and a half, and I need to be ready to step in. So I think the fact that really the high school has 1.5 administrators, I think has affected the efficiency just a bit, and that's something that we need to consider. But I think we both enjoy our roles, and I know that we enjoy working with each other. And I actually like the change in title, because I've always thought of Kevin as the co-principal of the school rather than the assistant principal, and I think that's really how the model should be.
I can actually speak to sometimes when the lane isn't so clear, and we pick up on each other, we pick up on strengths and talk about just where something might be in Dan's lane, something that, but I want to take it on, is attendance this year. So attendance would typically be probably in the description for Dan's role, but it's something early on in the job that I wanted to take on. We track attendance. I'm in charge of, or I lead the BBST team, where we look at attendance every single week. And the state is holding us to a very high standard for attendance and making sure kids are in school every day. And so it's something that the school has to really pay attention to. And it's something that I took on this year. So we're doing a lot of different positive things as well as punitive things to make sure kids stay in school every day. And one of those things is sometimes we have to bring families to court because obviously being in school is the law, and other positive things that we do. So sometimes we take out of each other's lane.
And when Mr. Barth wants to take things out of my lane, I always say yes.
True.
We're going to move on to the staff survey that was administered. We've done it twice. I know you have the handout, and I just lost my connection, but I don't want to waste too much time. As you can see, well, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, if you just click it. Thank you. So you can see the 4 main questions there in the first slide are in regards to the principle of curriculum instruction. And there you go. On the screen, the top bar is blue, which represents the 2017-2018 school year, and below it in red is the 2018-2019 school year. And you see that under the categories of timely observations, providing prompt feedback to teachers, conducting constructive dialogue with teachers, and having constructive dialogue with parents, all can see a pretty significant increase in 2018-2019. And these surveys were sent to all staff in the Maynard Public Schools, all 3 buildings. And then the next slide, which was related to the Principal of Leadership and Operations. Again, dialogue with staff, dialogue with students, dialogue with parents, all had big jumps. Safety, leadership also went up significantly from last year to this year. And the perception of effective communication also improved significantly from 2017 and 18 school year to 2018-2019 school year. And we see this anecdotally and hear it from staff quite a bit at Fowler. I mean, I can't speak for the other buildings, but people think because Mike's able to focus exclusively on curriculum instruction, teacher evaluation, teacher observations, he's not getting called to cafeteria for a food fight. When I'm working on ALICE planning, I'm not worried about the MCAS schedule. Mike's got that locked down. So I think it allows us to really do our jobs very, very effectively. And I think staff see that. They see that it's a benefit and that things are getting done. And I think the data speaks for itself there. Yep, of course.
One piece of feedback that we've frequently gotten is that by both Dan and I being there to support teachers in lots of different ways throughout their days, which can be tough for teachers, they feel that that support is helping them be better teachers. And we actually have specific evidence that I won't get into details here, where teachers have decided to stay here at Fowler because of that high level of support. So it's impacting teacher turnover and quality of instruction because you don't have new teachers coming in every year.
And we're getting one back who left.
That's right.
I'd just add very briefly that teacher attendance at the high school this year has really been exceptional. We've had numerous days of perfect attendance, or the only 1 or 2 teachers out of the building are on professional development or something else associated with school activities. So I really think teacher attendance is one way to look at are people satisfied coming into work, or are they quote unquote taking a mental health day? We're just not seeing that. We're seeing exceptional attendance on a regular basis.
Thank you. One of the things that I believe we all understand as principals here in Maynard that may not be quite as widely known outside is that candidates who are interested in coming to Maynard find this model really appealing. I was on the search for Mike, actually 2 searches, one in the summer, one in the early fall, and time after time after time after time, candidates were really impressed. They're like, so wait a minute, I'm not gonna have to do any student discipline? Nope. I don't have to worry about ALICE drills and all that stuff? Nope. You're gonna focus on curriculum, instruction, and improving teaching and learning at Fowler, or in the case of Green Meadow, at Green Meadow, and that again has been a real attraction. And again, something that may not be really widely known is that, I mean, I'm sure it's known to most teachers, especially the ones in this room, is many do not seek to become administrators. I have teachers telling me all the time, could never do your job in a million years. And one of the real blocks to that, I believe, is the fact that as your first administrative job, you're typically an assistant principal whose exclusive responsibility is student discipline. And the thought of having to maintain detention, the thought of having to have really difficult conversations with parents when kids misbehave, breaking up fights, or worse, that is a serious block. So when candidates find out in Maynard, especially the curriculum instruction position, that you don't have to do any of that stuff, it's super compelling, and I think attracts candidates to our schools. And that's something that I've learned, again, and now 2 searches for curriculum instruction principal here at Fowler and 1 currently underway for principal of leadership and operations at Green Meadow. Time and time again, candidates are fascinated and drawn to this model. And the last thing we want to say is we believe it works. I know there's been many questions. I live in this town, as you know, about the cost, about the research, about many things that people feel are not compelling reasons to have this model in place. But I'm here to tell you, and my colleagues here to tell you, it works. Day in and day out. It may not be perfect, and there are times that we share and collaborate and switch off, but being able to focus on the operations of Fowler School every single day allows me to be really effective at what I do. And I believe Mike feels the same way about being able to focus on teaching and learning and working with parents, working with teachers about it, allows him to be effective as well.
Yeah, I agree, ditto. It's absolutely right. It works. We just, day in, day out, it's our offices have an adjoining door that we leave open. We're talking all day, staying a high level of communication about what's going on. So sometimes if there is duplicate things going on, we can say who's going to take care of that. So I just find that as long as it is, I mean, the challenge is finding 2 people that can get along so well and have kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Marriage? A chemistry. Chemistry, not marriage. Yeah. Synergy, chemistry.
Definitely not marriage.
Then, you know, it's just, once you find that, I think Kevin and Chuck have it, Dan and I have it, then it just makes the day go so much more smoothly, makes the staff feel supported, the kids love it, so we'll see who they slime on Monday.
Sorry. I just want to say one quick thing too about the comparison between what we have here in Maynard and what's considered the typical traditional model of principal and vice principal. We've all been in it in one way or another, and the vice principal, the assistant principal, constantly has people going over their head in order to get the answer or get a solution, and we don't find that here. When people have a problem with discipline, they come to me. When they have a problem with academics, they go to Mike. And yes, many times we collaborate, but the assistant principal isn't the buck stops here. The principal is.
I don't like to talk that much, so I'm just going to say I agree with everything that they say. No, but in all seriousness, just to echo with what everybody was saying, I think at the high school, the change in model has definitely helped it be more efficient, even with the fact that it's a 1.5 position. Last year, I think you know, a lot of the things, serious discipline issues, you know, kids that get in trouble for felonies, you know, that would always be elevated to Mr. Karagianis, you know, so that would bog him down from the curriculum instruction and assessment. Dan mentioned the Alice drills and safety protocols, you know, that would be elevated to the principal level. So, you know, this year, those are I think the 2 major things that I took over. You know, I took over all discipline, you know, discipline from kids cutting class, you know, to handling investigations, you know, related to felony charges outside of school and things like that, and also taking the initiative on the Alice protocols. So I think that has allowed Chuck to focus more on the curriculum instruction and assessment. And then the other thing that, you know, to give more authority to the principal of leadership and operations position was the SEL goal. You know, I really was able to, you know, take that on and feel that I had the authority to make the initiative work and work with the teachers. And I felt that, you know, they knew that was my role to do. So I don't think that would have happened without this model.
I'd like to close by saying that, you know, based on what Kevin just said, it really has freed me up to do things like concentrate on the school goal around writing. We've had a 2-year goal around student writing. It's allowed me to concentrate on making sure that staff was trained in inter-rater reliability so that when a paper is graded, it's substantially the same grading process, teacher to teacher. Different departments have worked on specific areas of writing and have looked at pre and post student performance with interventions in between where specific areas of improvement have been identified by department. All of that is detail-oriented and takes time, and the fact that Kevin has taken some of those things like the most serious disciplinary issues, as well as things like the school safety protocols kind of shifted over to him, have freed up enough time to really concentrate on things like that. So again, I think to echo the slide which says it very simply, it works.
You guys done? Good night. Jennifer, did you have anything?
So I want to thank our principals for coming and doing this presentation. As Principal Costello mentioned, this was something that we had talked about, and in terms of what the message was that they wanted to present, they really wanted to share the effectiveness of what they're seeing, and they wanted to share the effectiveness that they're seeing when they are having conversations with other people. I think, there is a lot of other conversations and stories, but the reality is the buildings are functioning really well, and we do have staff members that are coming back. I have had more conversations this year about teaching and learning in my role that I feel have been productive and move the needle than I have in the past. So I thank them very much for their presentation and for their work with the students and with our teachers. It is at the core of what we do. I was asked to create a sort of comparison of, because the question has been raised, if we have a curriculum instruction and assessment principal in every building, do we need a curriculum instruction and assessment superintendent? So I did create, I gave the organizational chart and then just an example of, what tasks we have under curriculum instruction and assessment for your instructional leadership team, which I do want to include the fact that the instructional leadership team is not just myself and the principals of curriculum instruction and assessment. It is also our teacher leaders and our teachers. And so this provides just a little bit of a visual. It is by no means inclusive of all of the roles or the tasks that any of these positions have. And I will put these out back. I apologize, they weren't out back there before.
And I'd just like to add that you need the assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction and assessment for the vertical articulation across all the buildings. As much as we try to provide common planning time for teachers and teacher leader time and time for principals at the leadership team meetings, it's never enough time for a vertical articulation. And so that's why it's so key to have an assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction and assessment helping to create the vertical articulation that's necessary across a pre-K through 12 district.
Questions from the,
Do you guys want?
yeah, first us.
Yep.
I'll ask some questions. And then we'll take it to the audience.
Okay, I have several questions. One, was the same survey sent last year that was sent this year? Same exact one? Okay. To all three schools, both times? What was the rate of response?
I'm not certain,
Okay.
but we use a mailing list in our laptop, so when we type in MPS, it goes to all employees.
Okay. And I assume that's the same for last year as well? You don't know what the rate of participation was?
That's correct.
Is there any way to track if the same people responded last year to this year?
I don't believe so.
Was
but
it anonymous?
We could probably find out the participation rate.
Okay. And if it was anonymous, was there a way for you to ensure that the same people weren't responding multiple times? Yes. Okay. Were there only 4 and 5 questions regarding, like, what you've got here? the answers. Were there only 4 questions, and then were there only 5 questions? Or were there other questions as part of the survey that?
There was one additional question that asked the overall rating of the model, which I don't believe is on that chart, but I'm not sure if it is. It asked the overall rating of the model.
Didn't it have some open-ended parts as well, that feedback could be provided on it? I thought.
Looking at the survey right now, I'm not seeing
The bottom.
the open-ended part.
And were there any schools that no one responded from, or were there responses from all 3 schools?
So, one of the pieces that I think is important to note is that this first survey was generated with the consultation of the Teachers Association in order to collect data on the model. And in consultation with the Teachers Association in that first year, there was concern about disaggregating the data by building. They did not want us to be able to identify the individual teachers or the building that the teachers were in. So we honored that request. And in order to keep the data consistent, we honored that request in this year as well.
Anything else, Lydia? Yeah, but I'll wait.
No, ask your question.
I guess I have a hard time understanding how you can compare last year to this year when the roles were somewhat different. And you utilized the same exact questions. And I feel like it's comparing apples to oranges rather than oranges to oranges.
That's kind of
Okay.
comparing the previous model to the new model.
Did you have a question you wanted to ask, Mary? I do, I have a couple. Yeah, all right. So it all boils down to how it's benefiting the students for me. How do you feel that it's benefiting the students? I know Chuck mentioned, one example in that, but do you feel like it's benefiting the students? And can you give a couple of examples?
Just in general, I think since the overall efficiency of the program, of the model has, improves the school culture and makes the school run more efficiently, that trickles down. When we're able to have better relationships with the staff, because of this model, the staff morale is good, and so that they feel good about their job, so that they're more effective. There's numerous studies about school culture and how school culture eventually trickles down to, student achievement. So I feel like, above all, this model, because it's more efficient, because it works, it affects the school culture, which in turn, trickles down to the students.
Perfect.
I can't agree with you more on we should do nothing in a school that doesn't impact the student achievement and the well-being of our kids. And I could just go on and on about the ways in which this model has supported our students at Fowler. One of the things is, like Dan said, I'm not in the cafeteria for a couple hours every day. I'm not dealing with student discipline and other issues that come up like that. So we were able to hand our students a schedule last week for the first time in Maynard history, possibly. And so does that help students? It absolutely helps students, because things aren't put in place at the last minute, kids being pulled from classes to being given this or that wasn't thought of, and it's September now and Labor Day. So that absolutely helps students. We hear feedback all the time, and I've already mentioned this, from teachers, that because of the level of support that we can give them, it makes them want to stay in the school. And that definitely helps the students to have experienced teachers who want to stay and are happy being here. Kevin talked about, and we hear that feedback as well all the time, about teachers feeling supported, feeling generally happy in their jobs. And I know teaching is hard. Some teachers may listen to this and say, I'm not happy, maybe, but I think teachers feeling supported absolutely impacts the students. And so.
Terrific. I did very much, because I know when we talked about the two-principal model, one of the main pieces for me was that it provides more time for evaluation, and that is, significant up there, and just even the feedback that the teachers are receiving. So again, the teachers are benefiting from it. So, so my other question is having to do with the curriculum. How do you see it helping the curriculum going forward? More common planning time, more, what, because that's another obviously big piece that we want to make sure
I can
is
talk
happening.
a little bit about this and hand it over to Chuck too. One of the ways that, and I've started in November, so I'm still learning the curriculum in the school and getting to know all of the areas of the school. But one of the things is that by creating a schedule for next year that'll allow for more common planning time with teachers, now we're going to have CPTs that are just focused on data, just focused on student issues, and then focused on teachers having time to plan together, which will help them implement curriculum better. Also, as a principal of curriculum, it's my work that I get to do with Jen frequently to develop a cycle for looking at curriculum so that you have a curriculum always on, all the different subjects are on a different year, and you're piloting curriculum, you're reviewing curriculum, you're implementing curriculum, and then you're gathering data about it. And that, just having the time to be able to do that is so key. And if it were just me here at Fowler as the only principal, I wouldn't have that time to be able to do that.
Creating common planning time in a high school schedule is much more difficult due to how classes rotate across departments, and you need to have course offerings in every period in a different kind of way. Having said that, this model has freed me up to work with the lead teachers more closely and the departments more closely during professional development time. So I think we've been able to develop common goals that are a reflection of what teachers are actually seeing in the classrooms and kind of on the ground. And I know that we're in the process of working collaboratively with the team to develop an improvement plan for the high school that's getting input from multiple sources within the school and as well as with some parent groups outside of the school.
Thank you.
Again, having the time to do that is a critical piece of it.
Thank you.
So first of all, I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and to share your experiences. This has been a conversation for a little while in the community, and so we really appreciate the opportunity to kind of hear about it, to discuss it, to consider it. I know that for reflecting what the community, what's come up at various points as considerations, one thing has been, obviously, I think one of the reasons, several reasons that came up, one was in relation to budget. And as you all know, we're being a small district. We need to do our due diligence and just make sure that we're getting value for what we're doing. So I guess along those lines, there's two things. One is considering what other metrics you could use that would help to just show the ways in which this is impactful. I think that it's the survey results that we see there are pretty compelling. There's such a difference. And there could be a lot of factors at play, but clearly the model looks like that's one that really plays into that. And then, so just something to consider, because I think that could be just helpful in general for us moving forward, even as being able to help other districts to consider the model. If we have metrics that you could be able to share out in other venues to be able to really help consider that as a way to help move forward in public school systems and address lots of things I won't go into right now that we're trying to figure out. So, and the other thing with budgets was just, as I understand it, and I'm not going to turn to you for this part, but the way we've talked about it is that when the model's at 10 months for one and 12 months for the other, you don't actually have a difference in cost compared to 2 people in the building at 12 months, principal and a vice principal.
Well, I'd like to add too, I think there was some people who looked at the costs at different years, and one year, we actually reduced down to 1.5 per building. Basically, we had one principal of curriculum instruction and assessment that covered both Fowler and the Green Meadow. And the teacher feedback then was that they really felt we should have 2 principals in every building. And in fact, last 2 or 3 years, Chuck and Kevin, I think the school council at the high school has requested that we actually that we get a athletic director so that we could increase Kevin to be a full, but we haven't yet, because every year the budget is a struggle. And but when we did go down to 1.5 per building, I know that we received faculty input that wasn't working at the Fowler and Green Meadow. So that's another reason why the expense went up a little bit in comparison to other years. I wanted to make sure people knew back then we had 1.5 per building.
So at the high school, I'm a 10-month employee.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, okay.
Plus doing halftime as
Yeah.
athletic director.
right.
Wearing many hats. Yeah, so I guess then, thank you, I appreciate that. Then the other thing was just considering a little bit, so I would just ask on the, Dan, you played up kind of why people are excited about the curriculum being the CIA, but as far as being the leadership operations role, what do you think is compelling for that for people, and how do you see that role? I think we've heard more on the curriculum side. I'd love to hear more on the leadership and operations side, how you also see that, because that really is more focused on the students. It's very compelling what you're saying about the teachers, but.
So just like there's people that like curriculum instruction and assessment, there's also people like myself, and I think like Dan, who like that other side of working with kids. I think you get to work with challenging kids that, you know, just need extra support, you know, so that's something that I feel strongly about and that I enjoy about my role. And like I said, it's in this new role, I take the small problems and I take the big problems. So that's something, you know, and I alluded to it before, culture. I really believe in a strong culture. You know, I believe in the power of positivity. When we read The Energy Bus over the summer, I really fed into that and try to bring that culture to the high school, and I think that's benefited, and I've been able to, you know, work on the SEL goal. So, you know, that's more my realm. So just like the people, there's, you know, people that like the curriculum instruction assessment, you know, that's not me, but I like the leadership and operations piece. So, you know, I think they both have their strong points because they're more exclusive.
And it does, can I just add, and it does benefit teachers because working on those social emotional goals with students, you know, how to develop social emotional learning for students, that's been Kevin's realm at the high school. It is still working with teachers, but it's just a different capacity on the culture and how we improve things for kids and teachers.
Kevin, can you explain what the SEL goal is?
Yeah, that's what I
So
was talking about.
okay,
social
sorry.
emotional learning.
Thank you.
So we took the Castle, California SEL standards, and so we've been working with the teachers and next year the students.
Sorry, Bob, I did.
No, that's all right. He can articulate it better, but I did because I observed Kevin. You know, I was aware he's been working with the staff during
PD days.
PD days on that piece of the building leadership, which is really important. In this day and age, I know we talk a lot about how important social emotional learning is.
Right.
So,
I just briefly, this is a point where the overlap between the two roles is actually interesting. There are a number of students, there are students that are struggling academically, and where I'm in charge of curriculum and assessment, I meet with a little list of students, and I'll kind of talk to them about what's going on academically. And they'll start to reveal things about their lives and their challenges that gives me some insight into their learning, but then also really is an opportunity for me to fill in Kevin on what's going on in that student's life, because frequently maybe they're having some difficulty around disciplinary issues as well. So, I mean, there's an entry point, there are different entry points into students' challenges, and you know, if if Kevin's picking up feedback that it impacts curricular things for a student, he can bring that to me. If through my curriculum work I'm picking up things that are affecting students on the discipline side, I can bring it to him. So there is this, synergy.
I get to give hundreds of high fives every single day at Fowler, and that's a very important thing to me and a big attraction to this job, which is I'm the principal of the kids, and I know your kids, and I know your kid, and I know your kids. I'm going to get to know your kids pretty soon. I know your kids. I know your kids. And that's the best part of my job. And I don't miss doing teacher evaluations. It's a really important job, and I know Mike loves it, and it's great, and we, support each other in our jobs, but to be able to spend time with the kids in Maynard every single day in the cafeteria, out at drop-off, when they're getting on the buses, that's pure joy. So I think people see the attraction in that as well.
I do want to say that we'd spoken previously about the data walks, and some people in this room were able to attend the data walk, and you do see they have measures now that look at more the social emotional side, the culture, and then also at the academic performance and kind of bringing those together, and can see how these two rounds with the advent of the social emotional and bringing that piece to the fore and how that sets the stage for the curriculum. I see how those two areas together and being able to have you focus on those in the buildings and then have Jen's role be able to really see how that all plays out and create things like that data walk for us to reflect as a district together. I can see how that really is very beneficial. So that's just what I was thinking about when you were speaking about the roles and thinking about the data walk and thinking about how you do see these multifactorial kids are whole people with all different things going on, just like any of us. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Natasha, thank you for waiting.
Thank you very much, Natasha Rivera. So thank you very much for putting this together, and I appreciate seeing the input here and hearing your feedback. I was hoping if you could go back to the slide, I had a couple of questions about the staff survey results, specifically, well, either one for the principal of curriculum or the principal of leadership. If you want to start with the principal of curriculum. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding what I'm reading here. The bottom, is that percentages of positive feedback? Is that what the numbers represent at the bottom? So 75%?
Yeah, I believe the questions in the survey were phrased as yes and no questions.
Right.
Let me had it here a second ago.
Hello? Okay. So I guess what I'm wondering is, if that's a percentage of a number, and that has to be a number associated with participation, I'm guessing, of the survey overall. So
No,
if it's a 75, or is that 75 number of participants?
No, that's the percentage of respondents who answered yes to that question.
Okay.
So one could assume that, just to look at the last one, because it's a nice round number.
Right.
The red for, which one is it? Constructive dialogue with parents, 75% responded yes,
Okay.
and therefore 25% responded no. But it doesn't indicate the number of people who responded to that
So
question.
75 of a number, we don't know. We don't have that.
We do know the number.
Oh.
The number for last year was 60 staff members between Fowler and Green Meadow and 56 staff members for this year between the three buildings.
So 60 for last year, total participants?
Yes.
And then what is it for this year again?
56.
And how does that compare to total amount of staff overall in Maynard Public Schools, percentage-wise?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's about a quarter of respondents, a quarter of staff would be my guess.
So low participation?
Well,
Yep.
for this kind of, it's for a survey, it's actually decent. Like, if you get anywhere between like 25 to 33 is actually good in survey stuff. But I know it sounds bad, but just.
No, I agree, because we've done the survey for the schools, and I know the participation
Yeah.
is, we
Yeah,
had 125.
But
we're like, "Woo."
it is a good caveat to have in mind.
But I just want to put things in context a bit as we're talking about staff input, that we're measuring it, or we're presenting information that is really based on 50 or 60 members that have provided feedback throughout the years. Thank you for sharing that. The other questions I had related to some of the comments that you made. We'll sort of swap duties, and we'll sort of take out of each other's lane. And I know, I think that really speaks to your relationship with each other, to be able to have that flexibility. What would concern me or might present as confusion to parents is that it's hard to know which principal to go to sometimes, because things are not very clear always if things are being swapped a bit. And the other thing is, as we're interviewing, I guess my concern with presenting any candidate that they don't have to do discipline would be a concern, because that, in a small district, one principal's out, we would want to have someone who is experienced with discipline for kids to have those skill levels or expertise. So that's just some feedback on as we're looking at the model and how we're presenting it, and if we want it to be successful, I think we need to really have someone who is skilled in all of the areas we would want a principal to be skilled, including discipline or curriculum, and not just hire to one job description necessarily, because as you've both attested to your experiences, or all of you, is things do flow back and forth pretty regularly. And I think having a well-rounded principal to be able to adapt to our building, someone's out on leave, you need to maybe do curriculum, So I just wanted to share that feedback. The other question, the survey does have a question number 11. Please provide any additional information you would like administrative team to consider in evaluating this model.
Oh, I apologize, yes, I meant to say that. I did miss that when I was looking briefly at it. There was a narrative.
Okay, is that any feedback that we would be able to understand or share?
So last year, we chose not to share the narrative feedback because there were pieces in there that were very specific to individual people. We did share some of the feedback in terms of that was general in response to the model. Last year, the narrative feedback indicated that essentially they felt, the teachers who responded felt, or the staff members who responded felt as though there were more conversations around curriculum and teaching and learning, and that part of the model was generally more effective, but there was a question about the leadership and operations component, and the teachers or the staff members questioned whether the challenge was as a result of the model. And then this year, there was some very positive feedback in regards to both parts of the leadership and operations and the curriculum instruction and assessment. There's still question about, just that this is new and it is a different model, and is this, do we want to be doing this, were some of those components. But we did choose not to share the narrative feedback because it did identify specific people in ways that we felt could put us in a libelous situation.
Is that something that it was shared with the school committee?
I don't remember if you guys read it or not.
Is that something that could be shared with the school committee?
Sure.
Thank you. And the other part of the survey, and I'm hearing everyone talking about just the feedback, is that about teacher input, but a lot of the buildings are made up beyond just teacher input. And we have paraprofessionals, we have support staff, custodians, and so I guess what my question would be is the survey, when I was reading over it, didn't really allow, or didn't seem that it would be something that other support staff would be wanting to answer, because it was presented more tailored to teachers, but clearly feedback about support staff, or all from a teacher for leadership, are relevant to all in the building. So I think that is the other part, is it really targets only one population of recipients more so, and I wonder if that is reflective of maybe some reason not to take the survey, or there was not an option to say not available for questions that maybe didn't pertain to those who are doing instruction, but maybe also are present in the building.
I've already spoken at a previous school committee meeting. Nanda Landers, who is the president of the Paraprofessionals Teachers Association, and she expressed an interest in working with us to create questions that would align better to those roles so that we could get that data. So that is in process.
Okay, all right. And just to echo some feedback, I know it was sent to all Maynard, you mentioned Maynard Public Schools. I have heard, just at Green Meadow specifically, that some people didn't receive it. So I don't know if it was just the transition from the different systems or when the timing, but so I don't know if there was like a pulse reminder or whatever type of, hey, if you do the survey, I don't know how much we're advocating to get the information collected, but that might be something to consider in the future, given that we're not really capturing a good slice of the community who this affects. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Kranek. I have a student at Fowler, student at Green Meadow, and a future Green Meadow student. I had a question specifically about your three main points. The second point, you're saying many of the candidates in the last year have remarked how interested they are in the model. As a Green Meadow parent, I know that what we've been told so far that there have only been two candidates. So we have LaRoche and Tintle who are not being considered now. So who are these candidates? How many other candidates have we had? Are there any candidates in consideration now? Because, as of right now, my daughter doesn't have a principal for next year. So I'm interested to hear about that.
You want an update on the principal search?
If you're going to be presenting that many of the candidates in the last year have been excited or interested in this.
Right. Yeah, there were two finalists that were.
Who are these people?
Well,
Yeah, they're actually from all over, but
I would say, I think there were over 30 applicants, and then the screening committee brought that down to X number.
Yeah, we didn't speak to every applicant who applied for the job, but we went through at least a dozen to screen initially.
And out of those dozen, how many said they were excited by this? Just if you're going to quote saying that they're excited or interested, I'm sort of wondering, what's that number? Many is kind of a amorphous number.
I didn't count.
Okay.
But I want to just clarify that I did refer to 3 searches, not just one, where we spoke to dozens of candidates, and I'd say at least half indicated that they found this model to be particularly attractive and were very curious about it. And some just came out and said, that's why I applied for this job. But I did not count the number of people who said that, nor did I write down their comments for posterity.
Okay, and then my next question is on your key point, well, it's no longer up, of it works. If you didn't say that it works, I understand that would sort of, put your job in jeopardy. You're not going to say it doesn't work. But then Mike Barth said that you have specific evidence, but then you're not going to share it here. It's hard to look at.
What I'm talking about is a teacher who's coming to me and saying, I was thinking about leaving Fowler, but I'm going to stay here because of the level of support. And when I say I'm not going to share specifically, it means I'm not going to name the teacher by name. That's all I meant by that.
Okay, that's not how it sounded. It just sounded like you were saying that.
Just clarification, and that's been more than one teacher that's told us that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name's Heather Nickel. I actually have some follow-up questions in regards to what Natasha was asking, and Jen, it sounds like you might be the one who has the data, because the two different graphs have two different axes for the numbers on the bottom. So I just want clarification, are both of them percentage of total respondents? Because the other one only goes up to 80.
I believe so, yes. Dan, is that correct?
Yes, Google Sheets created those graphs, and by default takes the data and creates what it thinks is the best looking chart. I didn't.
But it's
try to
representing
correct.
percentage of total respondents?
That's correct. So anywhere where it says, say, 50% said yes, that's what's being represented here. Then the opposite is also true, which is 50% said no. So it's a percentage of the respondents to that question which were yes or no. So were any other choices? Does that clarify?
It's helpful to know what the axes represent when you're presenting data, so I'm asking for clarification. So yes, it does, but
appreciate that.
for
Thank you.
totals, if you said 60 people responded in 2017 and 56, can you just give us the total number of employees who had this as an option? So we have the other part of the fraction?
So it's approximately a third of respondents.
Can you give me a total?
Including total employees. Our total employees is somewhere north of 130. 130, 140.
And that includes just teachers. Is that what staff refers to as just teachers, or was this offered to?
That's everyone.
This was
No,
emailed
that's just
to
teachers.
every employee, full-time and part-time.
So that's approximately 300.
In the district.
So the
totals-
130 is total employees? No.
Stop for 120 teachers. Correct. Correct. Yeah.
And that's just people within the association, so there's people outside of that as well. That's not custodial, that's not secretaries, I don't know who else that went to.
Okay. So I think it's important when we, as a community, are reporting data back, that we first off have our axes labeled so it's clear what those represent, and also provide information about the total number of people this was offered to, as well as the total number of people who actually answered it. Because the data now with these numbers is very different than how it's being portrayed in this presentation. And that's the problem with graphs, is if you don't represent the information that's actually supposed to be expressing, then it can of course be used in a variety of ways. And one of the things that we're trying to do as a community is clear up misconceptions and confusions, and it's hard to do that when we're not presenting data clearly. So I just want to point out that those are some things that would be very nice to see in the future on any sort of graphs. Thank you.
For your feedback.
Bill Freeman. I have a daughter that's a freshman and a son that's in 6th grade. I've got 5 years of experience of being a parent in Fowler, and I have to say, in all the 5 years, this year has been absolutely outstanding. It works. You guys can ask all the questions you want around the validity of these stats, and I can tell you firsthand, being a parent, this has been the best year my children have had. The school day doesn't just start at 8:20 or 8:10 and go to 3 o'clock. It starts beforehand and it goes after. I have seen firsthand these individuals, these principals, at these events before school and after school. They've put in a lot of time, and we're sitting here critiquing these results. How many people have participated? How many people, the percentages, what's labeled, what's not labeled? I know firsthand it's working. Don't wreck it. These guys put in time on the weekend. Thank you for going to the PMC Kids Ride. Thank you. Thank you for going to the concerts. You guys are active participants. Follow them on social media. You'll see it. Okay? These numbers, yes, they're not great in the sense that they don't label everything. Be a parent. Come to some of the Fowler events, you'll see firsthand it works. So thank you guys, much appreciated.
Can I just respond to that quickly? I just want you to know that one of the things we were told is that this is data-driven. And so if this is going to be a data-driven decision to continue with this model, then we need to have accurate data in order to make that decision. It's irresponsible of us to otherwise.
I do want to just say, being a person that does data all the time, there is a spectrum of data, so I completely agree that we need to make sure we have metrics in place, but there's also anecdotal data, there's also experiential data from the clients, the consumers, the parents, whatever the particular constituency may be. So there's a spectrum, and I did bring up metrics just because I do think that there are ways we can measure some of this that you're experiencing and put that into practice for people to be able to understand and see, and that is a very important part of our kind of due diligence, knowing that everything that we know about us as a small district, make sure we're using our resources that we need to. Does that reflect? I don't want to take away from what you're
that's the
saying.
thing, is we're accountable. So when people come to us and say, how come you're spending this much money on 2 principals per building, we need to be able to back that up so that we don't fall into the same pattern of distrust and miscommunication and whatnot?
John Skogstrom. I have a few various scattered questions here, I suppose. First of all, was the decision to go to the two-principal model based on any existing studies or models? Can you point to any schools, any districts that had the two-principal model that were successful that we can see?
So there's been a wealth of research around instructional leadership and building leadership in terms of school improvement plans in the United States. Much of that has focused on changing, and this is going back into the 60s, much of that has been changing the focus from a building manager to a building instructional leader, which is part of the analysis in this model that we wanted to create time and space for instructional leadership to occur. There is a significant body of research internationally, specifically in European nations, where they are finding this model to be particularly effective in that it allows for both instructional leadership and transformational leadership to occur in a more efficient way than it does in the principal and assistant principal model. So there are research studies that are out there. They are more international than they are within the United States.
I understand distributed leadership. Can you give us any specific studies that you base this on or that we should look at?
I don't have them in front of me. I can bring them.
Is there any thought about how success for this model will be assessed going forward? I mean, it's one thing to work through the model for a year or two and then say, how can we show that this worked, or how can we show that this doesn't work? But is there any plan going forward to gather data and make a decision based on those things to see if it worked?
Yes, we are continuing to collect data related to student achievement and related to culture within the buildings. That will include both student surveys, teacher surveys, but it will also include some of the more quantitative metrics through the MCAS survey that is done in 5th and 8th grade, which we looked at during the data equity walk. And at the high school level, we collect both the cultural data in that capacity. We will also be analyzing the student achievement data so that we are seeing growth. All of our initiatives are designed to make sure that our students are achieving at the metrics and the goals that we have set for them, both at the state level, national level, and then obviously at the local level. So all of those data points that we mention every year, we are looking at our instructional practices, we are looking at our leadership practices to make sure that we are continuing to move students along those metrics.
Thanks. And finally, we talk about a 10-month position. Can you quantify that? Is the salary 10/12 of a full salary? And how many days is a 10-month position?
So my 10-month contract is 15 days. So the school year is approximately 183 that the teachers have to be. So it works out that I have to work 32 extra days throughout the year, like over vacation, April, summer, Christmas, and I don't make as much as him. That's why.
Well, he's got a lot more experience than you, no? Administrative experience? Is the salary 10/12 or?
It's roughly that, yeah. It is less,
I understand it's less, but.
yeah.
Do we know what the 10-month salaries or 10-12 of the full-time salaries?
Well, yeah. I am a math teacher.
I would have to look. I don't know off the top of my head everyone's salaries, so I would have to check.
All right, thank you.
Can I just say one thing? Sure. The school that I came from in Worcester had 4 principals.
The charter school, by the way, that's
Seven Hills Charter Public School.
Yeah, the point is also the charter schools look at things differently, and they try to divide duties out so they can be more efficient. So that was some input we also got was, charter schools use different models as well, and we're trying to, compete with charter schools. So this is another thing that we can be proud of, that Maynard's doing something special.
If you want a list of schools who are doing this, there are multiple schools who are doing this in different capacities. They tend to be the larger schools that they have an associate principal for operations and then a senior principal who's doing this. There are multiple places where you have a principal and then you have department heads or other leaders who take on some of these other roles. So this model is not exclusive to Maynard. It simply was a way for us, with our small number of resources and administrators, to be able to effectively implement structures that other districts have found to be successful. Lexington Public Schools has this model. Shrewsbury Public Schools has this model. There's a variety of other principals as well. Mansfield Public Schools had 2 models. Malden has house principals and department heads. They have 728 students in Medway, and they have 2 assistant principals, a dean of academics, and a dean of instruction. So there's a variety of other ways in which this is happening across the state.
Well, that's something to look at. Thank you.
Yeah, different labels, but similar idea of divide and conquer.
Thanks.
And become more efficient.
Jen, before you start, I'm going to cut off after Natasha, and then we have to move on.
I'm going to be very brief anyway. This isn't actually directed toward any of you, but directed towards the parents more. I just would like everyone to please keep in mind to be respectful for other people's experiences. While it's wonderful if some parents are having a better than normal year, please take into consideration that myself and other families are having less of an experience than you are. A lot of people are having difficult years as well. So that's why we're asking questions. So it's not good to try and silence the opposition.
I don't have any additional questions. I just wanted to clarify that my questions of the information is just for me to have a better understanding. It's not projecting any personal fault or deficiency in anyone's particular performance. I actually have positive interactions with all of you, except for you, because I have yet to develop a great relationship with you yet. But it is more that I like to make assessments and judgments and understanding based on facts that I'm understanding and reading a certain way. And so my question and any of my decision making will always be to see if I'm reading information correctly, and to create a healthy dialogue to make sure that we as a community are understanding what it is presented to us. So I just wanted to clarify that any questions that I have is not, I think Fowler, to echo feedback from a parent, is tremendously doing better for many people this year. I think that speaks to the dynamics of the individuals. I'm not sure if it speaks to the dynamics of just the model. I think that we have great people, great leaders in the building, and my interactions and just witnessing last night over, I think that the high school as well, great leaders, but not necessarily speaks to the model itself. So I just wanted to clarify. I'm not really sure if that was expressed clearly before.
It's the model. That's why we're here. Mike and I left the dance over at the high school where our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are over here, so we could be here with you tonight face to face and tell you, look in the eye, it works. Now, you don't have to believe that, obviously. You can look at whatever. You can spend 20 minutes in our school and answer for yourself whether it's working. You can talk to kids in this community who high-five me when I'm at Erickson's or wherever else, and it's because I have the ability to do the job with the kids, because I'm the principal of the kids.
Well, it's because you're engaged in our community, right? And I think that's fantastic.
But if I was doing staff evaluations, I wouldn't be with the kids so much. If I was scheduling MCAS, I would be in that office counting up test booklets and reporting to the state. How many days did we do MCAS this year? It was like the whole month of May. I wouldn't have been with the kids. Yeah, I love the kids. They love me. But I'm telling you, don't believe it if you don't want to.
Yeah, there's.
Look at other reasons why it's not working. But I'm here to tell you, it's working. That's why. Yes, I have an outgoing personality. I love the kids, but I'm free to do that. Free to create a spelling bee and a geography bee for our kids. Free to walk to school on Wednesdays because I'm not doing the MCAS. I don't have
some of the mundane tasks. There are a lot of bureaucratic tasks with the department.
Office tasks.
I'm sure he loves his job. Let's not.
I can't believe he thinks we're still using test booklets for MCAS. That was like 5 years ago, man.
Horrible job.
That was
right. Yeah, fun day.
But I don't think Mike would want my job either.
Right.
That's what I'm.
It's different strengths in dividing and conquering all the tasks.
No, and that's it. I just wanted to clarify. I think that we have some great leaders, but I just wasn't for me. I'm not sure if that equates to the individual or the model, and that's just what my questioning was around. So, thank you.
Did you have?
I just want to say, talking about the school dance.
Actually, would you mind getting up so that people at home can hear? Thank you.
Just a quick accomplishment for the freshman class. My daughter just texted as it ended at 8 o'clock. They raised $625 tonight at the dance, which
Nice.
brought their total for the year fundraising over $4,000 for their class, the freshman class. So just a little student accomplishment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow, if I could. So personally, I am also looking at this as a win. And the way that I am going, and I'm really hopeful that we will give it the time it takes in order to be able to look at the data. And I am going to be looking at, personally, the culture, because we've had some challenging years, strong foundation right from kindergarten or pre-kindergarten all the way up to the high school. The SATs, I am also data-driven, the SATs, the MCAS, advanced placement classes, and where our students, how they succeed when they leave here. And I will tell you, our students are succeeding when they leave here. So those are the pieces that I am looking for, and I'm hoping that we're going to continue to see improvement. So thank you.
I was standing in the back, I'm sorry. First off, thank you very much for spending your evening here. I appreciate you taking the time from your schedule to do that. I don't need a response from any of these are just suggestions. Real quick, you said that one of the challenges is finding two people that can work really well together. And the one thing that I would ask you to all think about is whether the system works in spite of or does the school work in spite of or due to the model? Meaning, does it work because we have great employees in the model, or does it work because the model is very successful? It's just something to reflect on. The other thing, very briefly, is communication streams can be a bit challenging when you have dual reporting. I would encourage, and I think everything's working really well, but I think that as we move forward, specifically with Green Meadow and new folks coming in, that we're very clear about what we expect for communication out, and also very clear for parents how that communication stream should come in and who that should be directed to. That's all.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for spending the
Thank you for being
spending
here.
the time
Thanks for your hard
tonight.
work, guys.
And, yeah, everything that you do.
Thank you.
Now we have the Green Meadow Future Committee update.
Nope, actually, I'm sorry. I'm up next.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Where?
Fiscal year 20 GM.
No,
plan.
next is, no, Green Meadow Future Committee update.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, actually, Pat. Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we had to reschedule our last week's Green Meadow Future Committee meeting, postpone. Our next one is going to be Thursday of next week. Really, there's a couple things we want to focus on, especially considering where we're at in the schedule. So in 6 business days, according to the schedule that's been posted online and shared with the parent community, again, 6 business days, we are about to start the work in Green Meadow. So a couple questions. We talked about this at the last meeting that clearly there's some staff turnover going on. I think it would be really helpful to better understand what we're going to do 6 business days from now, and what we're not. Because just reading through this very briefly, the ceiling work, the grid work, the plumbing work, painting, interior cleaning, all of that's happening in 6 business days, at least according to what's been published.
Hold on. Maybe you should have gone first. Yeah.
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 Do you mind if
That'd be
Do you
great.
want to?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that so
Yeah.
that then we can,
Sure.
you have some
Perfect.
answers, so
Yeah,
we're not doing.
some answers, not all of them, but we're working on it. So, as the school committee had planned at their last meeting, Lydia and Maro and I met with the town administrator and Justine St. John to review the work plans to date, some of the stuff that was shared, I actually color-coded the last Green Meadow Future work plan to identify the completed work, the summer work, and the ongoing maintenance requirements, so that we could identify the urgency of the work that needs to be completed in order to get the school open on time. And so we discussed the fact, you already brought up, that DPW and maintenance will be down several employees, and discussed possible solutions to that to make sure that that summer work gets done. In the absence of having that MOU that we've been talking about, because that's going to be a little bit longer conversation, we did talk about potential solutions or short-term solutions, but nothing is concrete yet. But I have to say I was very encouraged by the town's responsiveness and their understanding of the urgency of the summer work at Green Meadow. So I think, and Lydia, you could jump in and say how you felt about that meeting, because I know, Mauro, you were there too. I felt very encouraged by their support and their offer of support.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think it was really helpful for us to go back and forth, and they explained what they could and couldn't do because of current staffing situations, and we explained our situation and what had to be done and how can they help us with that without us being overly demanding and pulling them away from other things that they need to get done. And I felt like it was very collaborative, and I'm looking forward to what you and Greg come up with next week in terms of the timeline and the target dates and the assignments.
So to answer your question, your chart has a timeline and who's responsible, and Greg is working with Tim as soon as possible to get that done. So we're going to meet again next week, he and I, to review that again. So that we don't have that answer for you tonight, but just so you know, your town agencies are working together to try and get that done. So thanks for reminding me of that. But that was a very important piece that we all agreed on had to get done, that we have to start identifying the timelines. And Megan, you did send us a really wonderful spreadsheet, and eventually we'd like to transition to that as well. But right now, we just want to work off of, this is the concrete things we know that the Green Meadow Future Committee has identified need to get done, and we want to put dates and times behind and responsibility, who's doing it. So we are working on that together, but it was a very good collaborative meeting. So,
Bob, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you have the date set for when you guys are going to meet?
I think we do.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain
Because
we do.
that helps to make sure that if you have the date set.
Yeah,
then,
no, I'm pretty certain.
You know,
we
you
had
do the
said-
work
we had already set
to
a
that
date.
meeting, right?
Yeah.
For all of us?
Let me see if I can find it.
While you're looking for that, Bob, so one of the things that we're really focusing on is that both the town side and the school side have identified that the last 2 weeks of June are extremely important to get as much of this work done as possible, because it's the only window of opportunity where the school is going to be empty or almost completely empty. So for both the work that's been recommended from Maynard Public Schools as well as the Green Meadow Future Committee, both of those, as indicated on the schedule and as we've discussed, are elements that a lot of it the bulk of that work needs to occur the last 2 weeks of June, which it starts in a week.
Right.
So, and a lot
that we faced over this year. And we can't ignore those problems. You know, even though we're getting some positive results, and I don't want to ignore the problems, you know, we still have staff who are concerned about their health. And I'm committed to investigating and correcting anything that could be causing or exacerbating their symptoms. We will accommodate their needs as we accommodate all of our staff's needs in every building. When there's a health concern, it doesn't matter what building it's in, we accommodate their needs, and we'll work with them on that. I'm also committed to routine air sample inspections by our industrial hygienist as recommended in those 3 rooms where they located moderates. The recommendation was, well, then maybe you should follow up with air samples to see if, it might be on the tectum, but it might not be in the air. So the next level of testing for that would be air samples.
For the old wing as well?
I think we should probably, as a school committee, decide whether it's quarterly, or maybe we even consult with the Green Meadow Future Committee or whoever, our consultant, whether it's quarterly, we should, just maybe do random air sampling just to make sure, or maybe air sampling in areas where people have concerns. But I do think that we should continue to follow up and make sure that when there's a concern, that we address it. All of the inspections so far have been documented and shared with the staff and parents, and we've been doing that for quite some time with the Green Meadow Future Committee, putting it on the website there. I think we continue to do that. And, you know, when the recommendations are made, I think we need to immediately and aggressively correct any noted issues moving forward. And I am encouraged by many things that have been happening in the last couple of months. I'm encouraged that we're working on these short-term solutions as well as the long-term solution of the MOU. I think that's really encouraging. I'm encouraged that the town residents funded all of the cleaning and renovations for the Green Meadow School at the annual town meeting. That shows a lot of dedication to our community. I'm encouraged that we have the opportunity to bring a contractor in and provide an additional deep cleaning above the usual summer cleaning. And the Green Meadow Future Committee asked me to define that, and what I shared with you was what, you know, when we got the contractors, how they described it. I could probably look it up. I'm encouraged that the Green Meadow Future Committee has identified opportunities for further air quality improvements and things that you recommended, like the enzyme scrub and sealing the tectum roof tiles. I think were great recommendations that we are going to implement. So thank you for that. And I'm encouraged that we have found already the funding, and we're working on an RFQ collaboratively, as we discussed. We also discussed that at the meeting, Lydia, right? In Morrow. So we provide them with the documentation that they need to go forward to the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, you know, this is what we need as far as an RFQ. So they're going through their process now to get that approved. So the problem, and this gets to what you had asked, which is, at the last meeting I explained that we had to use data and all the information we've gathered over this time to decide if we are going to renovate Green Meadow Building, or there have been questions about whether we should find an alternative location, which we talked about that at the last meeting, would be very difficult and would be very onerous on the community to consider alternative locations, like tuitioning students out to every other school system if there was even room, and I don't think there is. But, you know, the obvious one is split schedules at the Fowler. That would be very onerous for our community. But I couldn't rule it out. You know, the questions have been brought to us. And so the school committee, you know, we had to go through this process. We had to go through this data. We had to work collaboratively with our association because they actually requested it, and requested us to consider alternative locations versus repairing and renovating Green Meadow. And that's what the holdup has been. But now I feel like we have the data. So the data to me, and I'm sharing this with the school committee, appears to suggest that we need to move forward with the renovation plans as opposed to relocation plans. But I also have to look to the school committee for the direction to spend that money that the town generously offered, and on the renovations, so that Michelle can get going, because she's been trying to get these quotes and trying to get these things in place, and she's been working with Tim. So they're trying to ramp up to get it done, but we can't give any definites until we have the authority to spend the money. And so tonight, what I would ask the school committee to do is to approve renovating the Green Meadow and making that the plan to move forward and spending the money on it, so that Michelle and Tim and everybody who's in place can then start to create those plans, get those timelines done, because, you know, already Michelle has tried to find out when the plan that we shared at the last time said we were going to try to make sure we were done with everything by August 12th, so the teachers would have 2 full weeks. Unfortunately, you know, we already started getting 3 quotes for the cleaning, and the only way we can squeeze in the cleaning is if it goes out 2 or 3 more days. So now it looks like it's going to be August 15th. And like you're saying, we have to get all these things pinned down, otherwise you're not going to get done on time. So tonight, we really need to make a decision that this is the direction we're going forward, and I'd like the school committee to vote on us moving forward, spending that money that's been encumbered, that the town was generous to approve, and then we can start getting all of those dates and times pinned down as to exactly when and what's going to happen.
So you need me to...
Or somebody could motion to renovate the Green Meadow School and spend the funding.
All right. So I'll make a motion to renovate the school and get the ball rolling on fixing it.
Do we need to define the parameters? Is this on? do we need to define the parameters when we say, get the renovation going? I mean, like, do we need to specify, we're going to do everything on this spreadsheet? What are we saying we're doing?
So we have said that we're going to do everything on the spreadsheet, although one of the things on the spreadsheet is to actually get the envelope study done. And as we know, as we learned, that's going to be a process, so that's probably not going to get done. We're not going to get a new roof on by September.
Right.
But if we do all of those other recommendations, then when you have a tectum deck that has been scrubbed and you have it sealed and you have a suspended ceiling put in, it will be in shape to start school off next year. It's not going to be perfect because we won't have the roof discussion done yet, but at least it'll be in a direction where we will feel that the air quality is safe.
Yeah, go in the talking, if you don't mind talking in the microphone.
This year is just the Green Meadow Future Committee recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to say, what Tim and I were working on, and when you're talking about this stuff, we're talking about replacing the ceiling grid, painting, replacement of sinks, those things that were on our initial work spend plan, the construction spend plan that we shared with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen previously. So what we've held back on was moving forward with anything until we got a final decision that we were going to move people into that wing and we were going to renovate it. So I can speak to those things, the ceiling grid, the painting, the sinks, so like the plumbing, those kind of things that were all on our construction. I know some of these things have already started to be done as the Green Meadow Future Committee items. But I just want to, really quick, if you saw the construction schedule that I put forth, the Green Meadow Future Committee, I think it totaled up to around $27,000 on your recommendations. That was actually coming out of our budget, not the budget for the Green Meadow Future Committee. So I know we're talking about the timeline. What we're pressured to do is the items that need to be spent out of that reserve fund transfer, which are those larger items that we need to have in motion and completed by June 30th so that we can get that money that was promised from the town to do it. The other items for the Green Meadow, and not to say that they're secondary or anything, but just speaking on behalf of the urgency for this vote is more so for the stuff that's going to be paid out of the reserve fund transfer, which is on my construction, whatever sheet you want to call it.
That we shared at the last meeting too. We did share both meetings.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that. These items, yes, are being looked at, but the urgency on these is a little bit less because we're using revolving funds out of the school district's funds in order to cover these costs because they weren't part of our original, and I'm sure Ken's going to clarify.
Well, now I'll add, that's why I color-coded it, because a lot of the Green Meadow, I'll just add one thing, and that's why I color-coded that chart that you had put together, because a lot of the recommendations are ongoing maintenance. They're things that need to be committed to, but not necessarily need to be done. Some of them are already completed. Some of them are things that it does say, summer work, and then some of the things are just ongoing maintenance.
And some, actually, I'll turn over to Ken, but some do need to be done in the next couple of weeks.
Sure.
And I'll point those out in a second.
Sure. But
I think it's actually the...
All I was, sorry, just to
I
clarify.
totally get you.
All
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was saying was that, like,
Her urgency.
the urgency
Yep, I
for
totally
me
get it.
is to
And
get
for
those
Ken.
other items that are going to
Yes.
be paid out of.
Yeah.
So we'll let Ken.
Madam
Go ahead.
Chairwoman?
Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you. So I'm a little confused here because I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So Michelle's right. There is an imperative to get the expenses that were on the work spend plan that we last talked about on May 1st, back before the Finance Committee. So we're meeting on Monday in order to do that. Okay, so that first set of the reserve, that first set of expenses that you all voted on the 25th.
Yeah, we already voted on those.
Correct.
That we're meeting on Monday for.
So you voted on them on the 23rd.
Right,
They went before the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday when
Yes.
we were there.
right,
And now they go before the Finance Committee for their consideration.
right.
So the Finance Committee's got to go through those 380. So that's $385,000. It's a lengthy list.
Nope.
And so that's what we'll be talking about. So this is what I was talking about, that there needs to be a little bit of clarity in what rounds of expenses are coming forward. So you all talked about something on the 23rd, but that doesn't get it approved. It's not getting approved until at the earliest on Monday, when the Finance Committee has a chance to look at it, because they've not had a chance to meet on it yet. Okay, so I'm just trying to be clear about the process here. As Michelle is aware, and I think she's making you aware, there were some expenses that those expenses added up to 385, whatever it was. And there are more expenses that have to come before. And so presumably that stuff has been spent or will be spent, and that has to be voted on you now, I guess, voted on by you. Now, I guess that's happened you all have a meeting on the 20th? So on the 20th, then that's the last chance for us to go through the process as we had intended it. That is, you all vote on it, it goes then to the town administrator, takes it before the Board of Selectmen, and then brings it to us for consideration on the 8th of July. And we have up until the 15th of July to get these things signed off on. But then I'm hearing about other work that's being done. And so the Finance Committee is going to be concerned about understanding the expenses that have been done in the larger, in the context of these other expenses that are coming in.
Can I just
Of course.
speak to that? So what they're talking about on the other sheet is the recommendations from the Green Meadow Future Committee. That doesn't deal with just that wing, it deals with the whole school. So when we were talking about what expenses, like when we talked about like not expanding the breadth of what went into the reserve fund transfers or whatever, I took those expenses as those are district expenses. Those are expenses that deal with the whole school in the required maintenance of that building and the ongoing maintenance of that building. So those things are not included in anything that you're looking at or that the Finance Committee would need to be approve or look at, because those finances won't trickle into that. That construction schedule I gave you was purely everything that had to do with the mold, asbestos issue, and all of the things that we needed to do to get that wing ready.
So I appreciate that distinction, but I want to clarify. The role of the Finance Committee is to take a look at the expenditure of the $610,000 and whatever else needs to be done. So we're not limited to just what is, our responsibility to town meeting voters is not limited by the 610.
Okay.
Meaning that, for example, the work that's being done on the interior of the building, which is at risk because we don't have a roof that potentially might not be protecting it, then the Finance Committee has a responsibility to make sure that we're taking a look, that we're ensuring that the investment that's being made on the interior of the building is going to be protected. Okay. So don't, I don't want to leave you all with the impression that we're looking to balance 610 and as soon as it's done, then our job is done. The Finance Committee, although I'm only one member, we've had enough discussions, I feel pretty confident that I can speak on behalf of the Finance Committee saying that they're very interested in understanding that this problem gets addressed, as I'm sure you all are, okay, I'm not suggesting you aren't, but we are taking a look at it, at the larger issue, not just, hand us expenses and we'll sign off on them and transfer the funds, okay? So I just want to be clear about that. That's why the idea that these other expenses which haven't been brought to the Finance Committee's attention. These meetings that are talking about, and then I see on here FY20 Green Meadow Plan and test results, and now I'm looking at a whole nother fiscal year, okay? And again, this stuff hasn't been brought before the Finance Committee, hasn't been communicated to the Finance Committee yet, okay? So I'm not trying to say anything, I'm certainly not trying to say anything bad is done, but we've got to have open communication. So if you all are discussing other work to be done beyond what was on that spend plan that we talked on May 1st.
So
You wanna make sure the money's well
because,
spent.
I mean, and I'm just for clarification, because like, if you think of, I mean, thankfully for Green Meadow, we have a committee that's looking at the whole school or whatever. But I mean, there are maintenance things that are going on in this school, there are maintenance things that are going on in the high school as well, and things that need to be ongoing. Is that something that you're looking for us to generally bring all that information to you, or is it just?
No, I think they're, she asked a good question. I'm not looking for routine maintenance. I'm certainly not.
So what I want to
Okay.
say is that the stuff that they're recommending on
Okay.
the expansion for the Green Meadow is more of routine maintenance that should have been being done, that needs to be done in order for us to continue keeping it a clean, healthy school. So like, that's why it wasn't.
But to
part
your
of
point,
this.
you want to make sure the money is the 610 is well spent, so if there are
No,
things that need to be done.
I'm sure you're spending it well. I think what I want to do is, so while I wasn't here on the 23rd, because I was at a master plan steering committee meeting, while we were talking about long-term infrastructure planning for water and sewer, so it was another really interesting topic, okay? Right? Wish I had been here.
Our
Then I
meeting
got
would've
to
been more
watch,
fun.
then I got to, I got to watch your meeting on video, which.
Oh, good. Oh, good. But it is different, isn't it?
It is different, okay. All right, so while I wasn't here, I did see the meeting. Now, if I'm up to date, with the meetings and so forth and confused, you can imagine what's going to happen next Monday when we go before the Finance Committee, who may be just hearing about all this other work being done. So I'm asking to make sure that there is clarity and transparency in full, and that when there's a meeting that's happening with Mauro and Lydia and town administrator and Bob and so forth, it's not unreasonable for the Finance Committee to go, well, wait a second, what's going on here? Is this the same? Is it related? Is it not the same, et cetera?
Do you want to see at the
Okay.
table when they do that?
I'm sorry?
I said, do you want to see at the table when they meet next?
No, I'm not sure I need to be at every meeting. I've got plenty of meetings that I'm going to. Okay? I'm not asking to go to more. Lindy, if you're watching at home, I'm definitely not asking you to go to more.
And she's saying, yeah, right, Ken?
Yeah, exactly. No, I sit there and play these while we're sitting on the couch together, and so that's our date night, I guess, all right? That's how sorry things are in the Estabrook household, yeah. Okay, so no, I'm not asking for more meetings, but on a serious note, just that there's a lot of stuff going on, okay? And it's just worth keeping in the loop. And so as these emails are fluttering back and forth, I would just ask for you to be mindful of the Finance Committee's responsibilities, and therefore how the Finance Committee might be responding to bits and pieces of information that are flying around, and you all are obviously in a position where you can make sure that there's greater clarity, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we'll see you on Monday.
We really appreciate that. I think that while it's related to routine maintenance, the fact that it's been deferred for, like, it's almost like the kickstart piece of making sure that everything gets that reset, and the amount of money that needs to go into that as opposed to what might be moving forward. So that's part of the making sure that we're investing in the building and doing what we need to do to get it, So I can see why you want to understand the full scope. And I appreciate that perspective, because honestly, I was thinking of the 610 and wasn't, so I really appreciate that. And you coming to the meeting to make sure to share that with us.
All right, so the other thing that I wanted to focus on is that I'm sorry, Bob, were you done?
Well, I don't know if the motion was made, if we want to vote on that, or do you think your input would be, I'd love to, if you think your input's relevant to that, the question of whether they should continue renovating or consider an
From
alternative
a procedural
location.
standpoint, no. I would let you take your
So I'd
vote.
rather have the vote taken
Okay,
first, and
so-
then hear the rest of the.
All right, so
let me ask you exactly what we're voting on.
Yeah, that was part
So
of-
that we can understand what it is.
Should we ask Michelle?
Wait, me?
She's paying bills.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the specific bills is what Lydia had asked, and so Michelle just framed it.
So,
No.
Okay.
Michelle just clarified, there's a
Yeah,
work
so-
plan that we provided at the last
Okay.
meeting. Remember that other spreadsheet that was very
Right,
detailed?
yes.
Michelle
Okay.
had provided that to FinCom. That is what you're voting to,
and I
you're
just
voting
want
A, to renovate.
clarify, we're voting
still
on
gonna do
this
that.
because there's the urgency for that as well. But concurrently?
Yeah.
Concurrently,
Whatever
good use of the word.
Yeah.
We will be addressing the Green Meadow Future Committee items as well. But not out of the 610,000.
And the most important issue here is
If that's clarified
that-
enough for what you're.
Right.
I think that's what we need.
And the most important issue is that we're renovating, we're not relocating, because that was the concern that we brought up at the last meeting, and that has been brought up to us. But that's what we have to move forward with, and that's what we've been planning. Everybody's been planning on that. We need to make sure we're moving in that direction.
I do want to amend the vote, because I think what we're, based on your recommendation, what we are doing is agreeing to spend the money for the work.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So that's what we're voting on. So I would say that, I would like to amend it to say, if you want to amend your motion.
So amending the motion to spend the money to do the work for Green Meadow within the 610,000, right? Is that what you're saying?
I would say also the time-sensitive work related to the Green Meadow Future Committee recommendations, and ensuring that we have that information and that also is being done in the time window that is optimal for it to be done. How's that for adding to the motion?
Hopefully Colleen got it all.
You got that?
Oh, she
I'll second the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? Nope, okay. Then I call for a vote.
All in favor?
So now we
Thank
can
you.
go back to the
Okay.
agenda item,
So
the
now-
Green Meadow Future Committee.
Josh.
Thank you. So the stuff that I was going to point out on the Green Meadow Future Committee recommendations, there's a few things that I think are really important that we focus on at this stage. We had talked about this when I met with Tim and Kyle and Aaron even at one point. So what I would recommend is that the univent cleaning, anything where we're removing any kind of mouse droppings or remnants of mice, anything that's going to pose kind of a threat to indoor air quality, the goal was, or anything really that's just going to make a big mess, all the dirty work, to really try to get that front line and front loaded rather, and get that done in the last 2 weeks of June. I think most all of it falls on custodial, at least that's the way it was described. So I don't think it's a major expenditure. So the good news is it may be kind of two different paths. But I think in working with Principal Dankner, the concern is once you get to July, our next opportunity I think is going to be the last week of August. At the same time, teachers are trying to get back in. So really it's important that we try to get those couple elements as early in the school year or as early in the summer as possible. A lot of the other recommendations can happen.
I actually just sent Tim an email today about the mouse droppings on the suspended ceilings that are there. And actually, that's a smaller area now because we've, removed a bunch of ceiling tiles and we have a lot of tectum tiles. But I said the same thing. Let's get the mouse droppings and the ventilation cleaning done quickly.
Yeah.
I do just want to say we have to be, we only have 4 custodians at Green Meadow, 2 on at a time. Thankfully, in that time frame, they'll all be working one shift when school's out. With the holdup on moving forward with renovating that wing, they're also going to be tied up because we were doing a lot of that stuff in-house. So, and I'm not saying it can't get done or it can get done. I just want people to be conscious of the fact that we have a limited amount of staff with a lot of work on our plates for the next 2 weeks. So I guess it's almost like a plea to, please be respectful of the fact that we have very limited staff, especially with the resignations that we've had. So I'm just trying to say, bear with me, I think, in the best way I can say that, you know.
No, that I fully appreciate that. And one of the things I think that might be helpful is the floor plans that you provided at the last meeting identify those areas that you're planning on putting students in over the summer. The good news is that for all of the classrooms, quite frankly, they're all independent HVAC systems, so they're not cross-connected or interconnected. So I would prioritize those that are going to be used.
Do those early, and then worry about the open ones later.
And then you can isolate the other ones and pick them off later. So I just in general wanted you to be aware of that. Night's getting long, so I'll be very brief. Air samples, if you're going to continue with air samples, I recommend bringing in Mike Feeney from DPH to discuss that. He's working on a document right now in response to the issues that have occurred at Green Meadow, that is going to be something that he then uses and sends out to all districts in the Commonwealth. Don't worry, it's not going to have Green Meadow listed in it. But it is kind of a case study for DPH. So he could certainly be helpful in that. The other thing I would recommend is that on the enzyme wash/fog, I hear what you're saying, but I think for the folks in the audience, what would be very helpful is to clarify that the intent is to just do the whole building, regardless of the rooms that came back non-detectable, rare, or medium. It's just easier to do the whole thing.
For the enzyme wash?
Yeah.
That was what the assumption I was under.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
And as well as the deep clean is for the entire building as well.
Exactly. So the other thing that I would just be cognizant of is that for the drop ceilings, if you're going to do those, the grid, you may consider it completely up to you. You may consider doing the grid and waiting on whitening the ceilings out and putting the ceiling tiles in until you get all the dirty work done. The grid is the longest part. That you can white those ceilings out in a day. Yeah. Like that'll fly. And lastly, just because I haven't had an opportunity to say this, it has been. I just want to recognize the staff, both Tim and Aaron, Michelle. They've done a great job. They really have. I've worked with Tim and Aaron for a few years now, actually long before the Green Meadow incidents. Very strong relationship with both of them, very collaborative, very positive. So I wish Aaron the best. I just saw him yesterday. He's doing very well in Concord, but he does miss everybody here. And I wish Tim the best. And Michelle, I hope you're not going anywhere because I think you're a great asset to the district.
Hold you down.
So.
Yep, that's it.
So if we could have a copy of if you have the updated spreadsheet, you said that you have a recommendation spreadsheet and it was updated with status and color-coded in terms of.
Well, Greg's going to be working on that.
Greg, oh, okay.
So we're going to get that to you as soon as we get it.
So because I just sent an email asking for it, but anyway, okay, great. I was on the same wavelength with that. Yeah, because there's a lot of questions we're getting asked about whether, the exhaust fans are running, and I know Tim was looking at that in terms of, so anyway, and just trying to get as much information from him before.
Is there, I'm just wondering, as we're
talking.
talking about this, so just given the timeline, given the time sensitivity, you have a meeting set with Tim next week to go over the work plan. Is there any way within that, given the time frame, to be able to just make sure we have everything considered that needed to be considered? So maybe meeting, I don't know if it's the two of you, I don't know, but so that.
So I think it was Greg and Tim were going to meet and then get back to us.
Mm-hmm.
But we can connect you if you'd like to connect with Greg and Tim.
So the thing that I'm concerned about is a gap. Like we are really down to the wire here, and I'm worried about any sort of clarification that they are looking for in terms of recommendations or misinterpretation. So when you guys met, do you have a sense that that they have zero questions, that they don't need clarification, or that they do?
No, I think there needed to be a lot of clarification, actually.
Okay.
But the issue, at the forefront seemed to be who is responsible for what. There's a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding around who's responsible for the exterior of the building and what seems to be like a 4 or 5 foot perimeter around the building. It seems to be no man's land, and nobody knows who's supposed to be taking care of it. And the custodians have typically been told that they're only in charge of the interior. So when ivy's growing up the side of the building, they don't go out and clear it. But on the other hand, DPW doesn't always have the time to stop all the other stuff they're doing to just come and pull ivy off the wall. So, or raking the leaves around the base of the building. So those gray areas are things that need to get clarified, and those are some of the biggest issues that we've had in terms of air quality coming in because of the decaying leaves and whatnot around the vents outside. So once Greg and Tim establish, first of all, who they can utilize and who they can afford to give to us for help, then they're going to determine which of the tasks should fall under their purview and which should fall under the school custodian's purview. And that also is dictated by the custodial contracts, because if it's not in their contract for them to be raking leaves on the outside of the building, then we can't ask them to do that. So there are a lot of like fine details that need to get ironed out right now. And hopefully, Greg was hoping he could meet with Tim on Monday or Tuesday and then get back to Bob as soon as possible. And then once we know who's responsible for which tasks, then we can start setting deadlines.
But if you'd like, I could email them and you, so that way we can connect them for more clarity, because I think that's always helpful. The more people in the room, the more chance for clarity.
Right. Yeah, that would be great. I think I'm certainly willing, but I think Josh would probably be the one to provide clarity on other things that might be helpful. Yeah, I'm not sure if Michelle, I don't know if you know this, but do you know if there's companies that that clean the vents? So in the sense that, to your point, that we have 4 custodians and, you know, they already have a lot of work, and now we have a whole list of other things that have to get done within a certain amount of time. And do you know if there are companies that offer those services that we could investigate in terms of cleaning out the univents or cleaning out the vents or things like that? I don't know if it's been discussed.
I would assume it's not my wheelhouse, so I couldn't really give you a definite answer, but I mean,
I just thought about it like right at this moment. I'm like, okay, well, what are the things that if we have a certain amount of constraint in terms of staff that can execute these certain things, if we identify, I mean, and this, obviously everybody knows that I would love to see a weekly plan because this, I mean, the point of like the pods, you know, that we don't have custodial staff available, like those are the kinds of things that we're going to like that will be apparent when we have a weekly plan, because then we'll be able to identify this is the thing that has to be done right now, and these are the people that we have to do it, and they're not available because they're doing other things, right? So like, so obviously we all know that, but I'm just saying it just because. So anyway, I don't know, that was my, if we can identify things that have to be done this summer that are a really big stretch for our current staff, that we don't think that we have capacity at this point in time, and we could get that into that meeting discussion with Greg and Tim, I think that would be a good time to have a conversation with it.
And only because I'm the money person, is that we really have to be conscious of the fund. I mean,
of course.
And I mean, I'm going to be completely honest, like, I don't have a lot of it. We're very close.
It's a very tight budget.
Like,
we're going to be talking about that later.
Very tight to where, you know, I'm not sleeping at night thinking about it. So I understand the need for all of this stuff to be done. I totally get it. But then there has to be the support of the funds behind it. And we can keep talking again and again of the million things and not add on, I'm not saying it like that, but it's a rabbit hole. I mean, really, we could go down and, come into Fowler. I mean, there are things that need to be looked at here as well, and I just, the reason I appreciate the Green Meadow Future Committee is so much is because you're able to take that, really deep look at stuff, but also give us almost like a planning guide for us to be able to, try and allocate our funds where we need to. As we've mentioned before, the maintenance budget for this school district has barely went up in 10 years. I did an analysis for 10 years, and it has barely went up for the entire district, and it mainly went up for utilities or for salary increases, contractual obligations. So, that's something that I think, Ken talks about a lot on the finance committee is that, that outlook that, just trying to foresee, and I think we need to really focus on that with the mindset that not everything can get done at once, but that if we have clear goals and clear steps that we want to take to reach those goals, that we're able to plan for it. Unfortunately, everything kind of came in one fell swoop, in this year, but I forget
switching
where I
to
was even going
preventative,
for it. So, I mean, I just want to say, like,
preventative.
we really have to be conscious of, like, we feel like these things may not cost $1 million. I'll just tell you, one of the cleaning companies came back to us with $62,000 quote. $62,000. I almost fell over. I was like, if they come back, like, there's no way. Thankfully the other ones were more reasonable, but that was ServPro, by the way. But just saying.
Don't
So
hire them.
no, but
Just
I'm like,
kidding.
like we really like.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the challenge. Yeah.
Could we pull one custodian from the high school and one from the middle school for 2 weeks to help the elementary school?
We possibly could, again, like
Yeah, but that's going to be over tomorrow. Oh. Yeah, with the last 2 weeks of June.
We
If we could do that.
we possibly could. I don't staff and I don't
Yeah,
manage the
that's not-
custodians, so I
Is
don't
that a
actually know what.
conversation that we could have?
We could have
But
that
I
with
could,
Tim.
I just want to point out that they also have their own buildings that
Right,
they
yeah,
have
that's why I
to,
said
and
one.
they're
For 2
stripping,
weeks,
they're
2 weeks.
waxing, they're doing their cleanings, and we
I know.
can't
Mhm.
allow
Understand.
the other buildings to fall
But if we
apart.
have the things that are the most time sensitive, we know there's a period of time in which we're
Right.
pushing to get that done. I think that seems reasonable. But obviously, it's totally not my wheelhouse. I do nothing with the custodians
Yeah.
and any of this. But,
Right.
so I think that if we are able to consider
And I
those things, then that would be nice for living you in to see what are those things when the building's empty, really understanding, and then seeing what we could do in that regard. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I mean, I appreciate all that, and I think that's all, great things
I think
that
that's
we
the
have to
conversation you can have
have
with
a
Tim.
conversation and be creative
Greg.
about how we can get
If
those
we get,
things.
if we're able to meet
Have
with
that
Tim
conversation.
and
Sure.
Greg, then we can talk about
Yeah,
it there.
yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
And also, if maybe I think this was brought up at our meeting this past week, was possibly if there were things like outside that maybe the town couldn't take care of, that maybe we could get some community help, like
Let's do it.
trimming around or
Josh has
ripping
said that
out.
multiple times.
Yeah.
He's already done it.
Right, so,
Mention that.
right,
Let's do it.
so I mean,
Oh, it'd be-
if we can do that,
So we could talk about that with
Yeah.
Tim
Yeah.
and Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would
And
be
I
great,
think,
and we would
I do
be
think at
happy to
one
organize
point-
that.
I do think at one point Kyle had some ideas, I don't know who was in that meeting, but some ideas on some different areas, because Josh had actually made the suggestion to us a while ago. And I think Kyle came up with some different areas that we could have some community involvement that would really help
That
us
would be
out.
fun.
So,
Yeah.
and I'd like to
Definitely
put my boys
interested
to
in
work.
Okay, so the summer use cleaning and renovation plan from last meeting, was this, I know some of the, there was talk that this was going to be sent to the Excel families. Do you know if that happened?
I'm almost certain Lois is an excellent communicator, that she already explained to them the changes.
Okay. I was
No?
going to say, could you double check on that?
All right, I can check on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also,
I thought Lois was going to.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was also because we've also got, we have the special ed students and that, so I
Yeah.
thought we had talked about it going out to everybody.
I think so, that's what I remember.
That's what we
Going
were,
out to the Green Meadow
last,
community.
yeah.
Yeah.
Last
I
meeting
would think the whole Green Meadow community,
Right.
because just the renovation plan, like the plans for renovation, the cleaning,
Yeah, we were
and the
talking
date targets, I think. So if we could get this out to the Green
ASAP.
Meadow. And so, the other thing I had, the Josh just reminded me, so who, was there in your meeting with Greg and Tim, was there a discussion about who was going, and as Tim is leaving us unfortunately, who is going to be the point person to execute the plan this summer? Was there a discussion of that?
There was.
Yeah,
Well, we
there were
talked
some
about
suggestions and-
about whether Greg can consider maybe an interim person or somebody, because the hiring process might take longer than we need to replace the staff, or identify staff on his side that he can do. But
Okay.
we did talk about the idea of maybe they can hire an interim person or something like that as well.
Okay, great. I wanted to go to the selectmen meeting on Monday, or Tuesday, whatever day, I don't know what day is it, but I couldn't make it to ask that question, so I wanted to ask here, and then I'll go ask about that.
Hopefully we'll have an answer on that before the next selectmen meeting, 'cause,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then I actually went back to my notes from some previous meetings, one where we were talking about bugs, and Bob, can you send us the procedure about classroom incidents? So I think we would like to understand when there is an incident in a classroom, what is the procedure to notify the parents? So obviously we're thinking about, two examples this year is like a ceiling tile falling or a bug infestation, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be about the space, but we would like to understand, obviously that's our lens for that, but and then just making sure that we have a clear understanding before we go into the next school year.
Okay.
About classroom incidents and how that gets to parents, so.
I can work with the building administration to develop that, because I don't think there is other than we are all trying to improve our communication.
Right.
Building level, district level, there isn't a clear protocol, but we can certainly put one in place.
Okay, great. And maybe there's already something that is informally done here or the high school, and we can just get that and then standardize it. And whether we need to supplement that with some technology in terms of, I don't know I'm not familiar with like the IT systems, but I don't know how easy it is to email a classroom, right? Like all the parents
Right.
in one classroom. I don't know if that is like, if every time a principal has to like email a classroom of parents, are they like starting from scratch or,
So that is,
you know?
that has been a problem this year, and that's probably why that's been a problem
Okay,
this year.
I can imagine, yeah.
Because we switched over to the new system, which actually makes it easier for us to communicate on Facebook, on Twitter, with our news post all at once. But for some reason, we've been having trouble getting the two systems, the student information system and that system, to work to then disaggregate the data to get down to the classroom level. So that would explain why there's been a problem communicating that way. There's got to be a manual way of creating those class lists as best as possible at the beginning of the year, so that at least you have simple listservs. And
Right.
I don't think that was done in that building, and I think that was the problem.
Okay, great.
Just to give you, now I remember like how that became a problem.
Okay.
So I have a question about that, and it's a lousy example, I'm sorry. But if there's lice in a classroom, how do we respond how do we get the word out to parents that way?
We don't, that's changed.
We can't
That was
even
a few
tell
years
them
ago.
generically?
Well, you tell once a year, like there's lice in the building. That's
Yeah.
the
Oh, my goodness.
notification process.
Yes.
And
Oh, my
no
goodness.
classroom specific, yes.
I mean, I would never say the kid, but it's a stupid rule.
Well, our nurses brought it to us,
No
and that was an
offense,
issue a
but
couple of years ago, but, yeah.
Oh, we're becoming so politically correct, it's ridiculous.
But more recently, you pinpointed the problem was a but Megan pinpointed, the problem was a technical problem.
Yeah.
Based on two new systems.
Okay.
Or a new communication system, a new student information system, and trying to get them to work together. So you really did pinpoint the problem.
Yeah, do you have a sense that that is solved for next year?
I don't.
Okay, great.
So I'm gonna write Stephen, our technology director.
Great.
And I'll bring this up to him to help
Awesome.
us come up with a solution.
Great, because I think that,
And the solution may be as simple as principals will have to, a protocol where principals put together a listserv, work with the
Right.
teachers, because the teachers they send out information, but sometimes it's just a matter of getting that data
I was
together.
the parent that set up the emails for my classroom
Right.
teacher
So-
because that was a lot for her to have
Right.
to do manually. So,
Mhm.
yeah, if we can solve that for next year, that would be helpful, I think.
If people use
little off topic,
SurveyMonkey,
but-
SurveyMonkey, they type it in and then it goes directly into a database and no one else has to type it in.
Yeah, let's figure that out. Okay.
One last real quick thing, just dawned on me, so we're under a time crunch to get the pre-KK wing work done because it's Cinderella money come June 30th. One thing to think about on that front is that before we do our drop ceilings, we need to make sure we do our enzyme wash or fog. So if they're gonna start that work in a week or two, we need to, backing that out, we need to start that like now.
Yep.
Okay.
So.
There's a lot of stuff to go on.
I know, yeah,
tomorrow.
I feel for you. And if there's anything we can do to help
Sure.
at all, please let us know.
We'll
happy to
recruit
help.
you.
I'll come down anytime.
Yeah, Michelle and I are going to move furniture tomorrow morning because we don't have the custodians available, but we're going to work on it. So just so you know, we're trying to help out as much as we can, and everybody's chipping in. You know, we've had conversations with the teachers too. We're trying to help.
Great. Yeah, Michelle, anything we can do for a plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I do have just
Oh,
two
sure.
things.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if they're directed to you, but you can be here for. Mary just brought up a thought that I think we should have in.
Oh, did we want to bring that up?
I think it's worth considering and letting people know that we need to have contingency plans because again, everyone's best intentions is to have this in good shape and we're really working, people are working their butts off and staying up at night trying to think about this stuff. But Mary just suggested perhaps you end up starting school a little later, like after Labor Day this year.
Ooh. We can.
Just as an option to give the teachers a
So we'd
little
have to
more.
review the calendar that we've
We
already
would
approved.
have to review the calendar
But
again.
that's not a bad idea, Mary.
But it just gives, like,
Yeah.
teachers need to be able to get in there.
And a lot
if
less
it's,
stress.
Oh, we already know it's a little later.
Well,
Yeah.
when would we?
Well,
when
we'd
would
have
we
to do
need
it
to
quickly,
that?
so Colleen and I will look at the calendar again, we'll see what we can do
It's at
about
least something. I
after
mean,
Labor Day.
it's not, you can't, obviously can't delay it too long, but it's something, right?
Yeah, and of course, we would work with the association.
And we
because-
could go back the other way if you guys like that better after, but it gives you something for.
Oh, yeah, just this year, it would just be this year.
And then the other thing was I just wanted to be clear when we are voting to spend this money for the renovation that we have all been clear as well in support, obviously, the policy that individual accommodations for individual teachers and their needs and
Sure.
staffing will be made.
We do that as a matter of practice. I mean, as an
Yes.
employer, you really have to make
Yes.
accommodations for teachers, but we would do that anyway.
Right.
We always have, and we always will.
Right. I just wanted to explicitly
Yeah.
state that and recognizing that that is what you do, but just have that in this situation, just be very clear.
And I just wanted to ask that the 50,000 and where that is, because I know the last time, I think the last meeting, that RFP was with Greg. Is it still there?
Go for it, Bob.
The 50,000?
Yeah.
the
so
envelope.
that-
The envelope study.
Right.
So the envelope study.
35. Oh, go
Yep.
ahead.
No, I think what Mary's asking is not where it's at as in funding source, but where it's at
Oh,
as
yeah. So
in the process.
In the process, so
Process.
Greg wants to bring it to the Board of Selectmen. He asked me for an official letter to explain it. Josh actually helped me with the letter. I took your verbiage and that explained it, which was great, and I put together an official letter on my behalf to Greg, who's going to present it to Board of Selectmen to get the approval to continue on with an RFQ.
Is that Tuesday's meeting, or I can't remember?
I don't know if
the
it's
time
going to
they
make it
meet.
to this Tuesday. Do you remember?
I don't remember the next time. they
Lydia,
meet.
if it was
That's
this
okay.
one or the following one?
I was told the 18th.
The 18th.
Right, the
Okay.
18th, yes.
So,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
very
you
much.
both very much, the whole committee.
All right. Budget update.
So, we've talked a lot tonight about how this is a very tight year going into this year. The budget is extremely tight, and we recently had another out-of-district placement that adds another $54,000 of expenses in the fiscal year 20 budget. And Michelle and I thought it would be prudent to discuss other cost-cutting measures, first with the leadership team, but then now here with the school committee. The leadership team reviewed their strategy of trying to make reductions through attrition, and so they have identified 2 more recommendations for you to consider. The first one, and we created a chart, so there's a chart for the school committee, and there's one out, there were extra copies out there. The first one is to reduce the number of grade 1 sections from 6 sessions currently scheduled that have 18.3 students per class on average, to 5 sections, which would have 22 per class. That would also include, I have the Spanish immersion going up from 25 to 27, because in the past, we've always added 5 more students above whatever that class has, so that way, through attrition, we do know that people move out of town, they're in the program, and the Spanish immersion numbers get smaller, and we don't ever want it to get too inequitable. So, if we didn't go up to 27, then the 5 sections would be more like 23. But I do think that it's reasonable to have 27 in the Spanish immersion and the 22 in the 5 sections.
I thought it already was 27.
No, last year we tried, and originally it was 25.
Okay.
We brought it up to 27. We backed it down to 25 or 26, depending on, because everybody gets worried. Class size is an issue, and we get it. But the opportunity here is that we do have a retirement next year. And so we can, but we have to make the decision tonight because we have to notify the staff, or we should, except in extreme circumstances. But contractually, we should notify them of their placements by July 1st. So tonight, we have to decide on, is this a reduction that you would consider to help offset the additional expenses that we already know are coming in? You can see on this chart that actually the class size at grade 1 at 18 is lower than even the kindergarten class size. So bringing it up to 22 would just make it more equitable to grades 2 and 3. So it is a reasonable consideration to reduce one section. It's through attrition because we have a retirement, so it's not like we're laying anybody off. And it would save us the money that we have in these additional costs. The other thing that we brought to you through attrition was that Fowler had identified during the course of this school year that several students had moved out who had paraprofessionals, and they weren't going to backfill those positions. But going into next year, we only identified reducing one of them because we always have a concern that there might be additional needs. And what the special ed department chairs, the director of student services, and the principals at Fowler said, they would look at the schedule more tightly as they're developing it to see if they can actually reduce an additional paraprofessional position. Again, it was through attrition, though. And so in other words, we wouldn't be hiring that additional one, whereas we kind of left it in the budget as a safety gap because sometimes we do have increased paraprofessionals. And while that would not cover the full $54,000, I think Michelle and I are very concerned and feel that it's prudent to consider both of those measures as ways to have funding, to not have as tight a budget as you have right now. So I know Michelle and I are recommending that you consider both of those reductions, or at least letting us explore them. While the one we have to notify the teachers of.
But you said we don't have to do it until July. I'm not comfortable voting on this tonight.
Okay.
So
The next meeting?
I'd like to do it the next meeting and have
Okay.
some additional conversations.
Sure.
Because it's really, it's going to have a serious, and there's other things, it's going to have a serious impact. So I think just to, yeah.
Where'd you get this?
Oh, this was part of it, too.
Oh, you printed it at home?
Yeah, I did,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Printer's not, so-
But we're not jeopardizing anything by
You do
doing
have one
it.
more meeting. I think that the contract says we have to notify them, although I know we were planning on notifying placements for most teachers by next week. We try to get them out as early as possible, but
I think for the good of everybody, I think, I'd really like to give this some more consideration.
So is this a one or the other, or you're talking about both?
So I think we already know where we have a $50,000 additional expense. So this was the recommendation of the leadership team, was to consider reducing one section because we have a retirement.
Mhm.
And that would cover that. As far as reducing the paraprofessional position, when we presented it to you before, we did identify that there were 2 move-outs during the course of the year, and that Fowler hadn't backfilled them. But we only budgeted for 1 move-out for going into next year. That does not cover the full cost of the additional expenses, but it's a prudent measure, is to consider not filling it unless we absolutely have to.
Okay.
I'm just one person, but yeah, I'd like a little bit more
Do you have
time
a
to.
I was going to ask.
I have
a question. Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure I understand the chart, because there's a bunch of red. So are we just moving the grade 1 down to 5
Correct.
sections and not not kindergarten? 'Cause-
So currently, the reason why the chart is, and Jennifer's good at color coding, the blue is what we currently have.
Yep.
And then she had color-coded the pink to just say, if you went down to 5 sections in the two grade levels that have 6 sections, that's what it would be. Because every year, we look at every class and their class sizes, but that was not a recommendation to move kindergarten to 5 sections. It's just identifying what the number would be.
Okay. So you're only talking about grade 1?
So we're just talking about the grade 1.
Okay.
I also want to just note that any classroom with grade 1 children with 27, I think that is a concern. I totally appreciate the consideration of attrition moving forward. So I just don't take that decision lightly.
Well, the other thing is you could recommend that stay at 25, and then the 5 sections would average 22 point something, right? So
there'd be 23 in some classrooms?
So it's, yeah, so I think the math on this isn't quite accurate, the way that I'm understanding it. So
Okay.
right now, there are actually 23 students in the Spanish immersion kindergarten class, because we had someone move in the middle of the year and someone else decided not to start the year. So there's 23. So we could bump that class up to 25, right, which is what it had started at. If we do that, the average class size, with 25 sections is actually with 5 sections in first grade, with 25 in immersion, is 21.25.
Oh, thank you.
If we put 27 into immersion, it's 20.75.
So
I don't know who has 0.75 of a kid, but.
So you're oscillating.
So then that makes sense to keep the Spanish immersion at 25.
To bump it to 25. And then you only
Okay.
have 2 kids adding it in first grade, which to me makes more sense than having 4 kids who are new to the program in first grade. It makes the class size a little more equitable with the other classes. I understand oversubscribing it for attrition, but, so the math on this isn't quite accurate. If we had it at 6 sections and we put 25 kids in the immersion class, we have an average class size of 17. If we put 27 in immersion and we have 6 sections, we have an average class size of 16.6, which are really small classes. So it's why I think that may make sense to not have an additional first grade teacher to go to 5 sections, but I just wanted people to have accurate numbers because they're not in
Can you
there.
give back just the, I'm sorry, it's kind of late, and those were a bunch of decimal points and numbers. So just so
I'm a
if
numbers
we're at
person.
25 for next year in that grade 1 Spanish immersion class, what would the number be in the grade 1 other
sections. The 5
sections.
So if we had 5 sections, it would be 21.25 would be the average.
Okay. So that means
And with-
most classrooms have 21, and there's one that would have 22.
22, exactly.
Yeah.
Since you can't divide a child into 4
Four
pieces.
pieces.
Right. Yeah. And if we had 6 sections, the average would be 17.
Not
Yeah.
18. So
Not
that
18.
is much.
That math was done without taking out the immersion kids, which will be a different class size.
Right,
So
right,
I
right,
just,
right.
that should inform some of the decision.
Okay,
I understand
great.
waiting 2
That's
weeks,
very
but that's.
helpful.
That's great.
Yeah, it does a little. It really, yeah.
Just real quick, if we do consider 5 sections, just I would keep in mind classroom size, the actual physical size. As you increase the number of kids, you want to make sure that the classroom size can actually support it and function properly.
Yeah, but the other thing I would add, though, is by reducing one section, that also reduces the strain on that building with all the classrooms that we've had, too.
Yeah.
So that's another bonus to reducing it to 5 sections. You'll have that one more extra room available for teaching staff, and we did have some staff traveling even when we had the use of the wings. So this would help the staff who are traveling, not maybe, one more teacher. I forget whether it was the Spanish teacher, maybe the teachers can remind me, was traveling, so that teacher would now have their own classroom if we reduced the number of sections. So that would be another benefit to doing this,
Okay.
besides saving money.
If we need to make a decision on this more urgently, couldn't we call a session before our next meeting if we need to?
Well, no, I think that as long as we do it by July 1st, we'll, I know Colleen and I, like I said, we like to get the placements out for the staff.
Well,
They
yeah,
like to
and
know.
I'm sure they like to know too.
Yeah, right, so that's another reason for
That would be
doing it
nice.
sooner than later,
Yeah.
but,
It'll be well before. I just, want to have some conversations.
Karen?
Yeah, the other issue is letting the children know who their teacher is.
that's another good point, thank you.
That will be happening next week.
That was early this year.
So that's why it really
right.
would be beneficial if we could do it tonight, but,
I'm just not comfortable doing it.
So Mary
Thank you.
Brantley has been the one that's, she's on a budget
Just not-
subcommittee,
not
she's been
comfortable.
really,
I just
so I
want to have a bigger conversation, bigger picture conversation. Well, this kind of brought up, but yeah, so, and the kids, I understand they want to know before they leave, but many years, they've known 2 weeks before they, start school.
The parents were already told.
Parents were already told.
They would know
They're-
next week.
that they would be getting the information. We haven't gotten it to them yet.
Well, so maybe
But-
we have
but-
another meeting.
Yeah,
But which would the
Wanna have another
parents
meeting
rather
next
have
week?
us do? Make a rash decision or maybe not fulfill a promise?
And I'm not opposed to having another meeting if we need
yeah,
to do
if we
that
needed to have
before.
another meeting.
It's one grade too, right? It's not like all the other, so it's one grade.
Right, the other ones would be
Yeah,
able
but
to.
it's different conversation.
They won't notify just that, they won't hold that grade back from notifying.
Right, it's either all or nothing.
All or nothing.
Right, yeah.
Got it.
Communication goes to parents and says, here's why we can't let you know, like if we do that.
Right, and there could be
But the
movement.
children were told that there was going to be an up day.
Okay.
Yes.
They were going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
their
That was a
classroom
goal
to
of
meet
the
their
school committee,
teacher,
yeah.
To see the classroom.
Can we
So,
tell the children
do have
that grown-ups make mistakes?
Well, we do have the FinCom meeting on Monday. My question is, would we want to meet earlier
We can do that.
Yeah.
on Monday, so that way the decision could be made on Monday, which would help the Green Meadow to get what they need to get done. Does that,
I'd rather make it
Is
thoughtful decision.
everybody going to the FinCom meeting?
I am now.
I know, yes, I am too.
It's the 10th?
Yes, Monday.
Monday the 10th?
Yep.
I'm technically on duty. I was not planning to go to the FinCom meeting. I would have to get a sitter, so I can work on that.
Miles can watch your kids.
Yeah, but we do have a quorum. We would have a quorum.
Anyone here want to watch my children?
And we can hold,
Thank you, Renee.
with one
Okay.
agenda, we could actually hold the meeting at 6:30 or 6 at the earliest. It's up to you. We will, we need to post it.
Tomorrow.
Can we
right?
post it, Colleen, by tomorrow morning? For Monday? Okay. Colleen's the one who does the posting, so. It's got to be,
48 hours. 48 hours.
It's got to be 48 hours.
Right, 48 business
So how
hours.
about 6
So-
o'clock? Can we say 6 PM, just to give us enough time?
Can we post it right now?
Yes, 2 business days, so Monday would
Yeah.
not be.
Us have-
posting an early meeting on Monday.
Colleen, you're the boss.
Well, you can have a 10 o'clock meeting if it's posted right now, so.
Well, Katie?
Oh,
Katie would
yeah,
like to speak.
Katie.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
It's your job.
I'm not saying yay or nay to this. I also just want to speak as a kindergarten teacher and for the team. That kindergarten class going to first grade went through a lot of trauma. They lost their room suddenly. They're 5. They never understood what happened. There was a gap of about 6 weeks of no curriculum. We've tried our hardest, but they're a gap, and they're socially, emotionally still building. So I want you to realize that too when you're thinking about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, definitely.
So do we want to do Monday, or should we do Tuesday, so we have the full days? It's up to you
I can
folks.
do Tuesday also.
Tuesday. We could even do it in the morning, or I'm not sure what your calendars were.
I cannot do Tuesday morning. Unfortunately, I have full workday on a Tuesday.
Tuesday night?
And I can't, my phone just died, so I can't look at my work calendar right now. I'm sorry. But possibly Tuesday night, so go for it. And if the three of you can do it, then I will join if I can. Do.
There's no way to.
Here, let me see if I can hop
you want
on. Let me see if I can get it on the.
Check in with Colleen tomorrow, first thing in the morning, and then we can post either, whatever we find out, whether we can post on Monday or Tuesday, Colleen will make it happen. Does that sound? If we check in with her first thing in the morning?
Yeah, will email as soon as I have it. I'm trying to get my windmill up now, but it's not worth trying to do. It's just on here, so I don't have to try to go through the rigmarole to figure it out.
Tuesday works, either Monday or Tuesday works for me.
Okay.
But then is Tuesday early enough, Karen, for the teachers to get what they need to get done?
Probably,
Thank you.
if we can know, like, right away.
Right away.
So that's why I was thinking Tuesday morning or Monday night. If we could still do Monday night, I just think that's
You know
ideal.
what, I don't have to be there.
Right, all we
You
need is a
guys-
quorum.
Right, if you have the quorum, I don't have to be there. Unfortunately, I do have to go to work on Tuesday morning. So, so you guys could meet, and I would just have an individual conversation with you tomorrow if I had any considerations, or then I could bring those up.
Okay. So what are we saying now?
Because I feel like this sounds like it's very down to the wire sensitive timing. So if Tuesday morning is going to make a difference, I'd rather that you meet if we have what we need to do that.
I'm open. I am too. So, what time?
Do you want to do 9?
Yep.
Does that work,
Tuesday
Lydia?
My dog is supposed to have her nails trimmed.
Anyone want to trim the nails? Yes, no, that's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, so Tuesday.
Poor Dakota.
Tuesday.
So I'll make sure to get you guys what you would need from me.
Okay.
Bob's office, yeah.
Tuesday.
And if I have any particular questions, I can ask you. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. You guys all set? Yep, okay. On to citizens' comments.
All right.
Hi. Tiffany Kennedy, a paraprofessional at Green Meadow School. I'd like to take a moment to compare the 3 reports. I've put them on a spreadsheet for you guys to see. You'll see the ASAP Air Quality Report, which took place in September of 2018. The report paid for by the MEA and MESA, completed by Mike Cerici, was an air quality and tape method, which was completed in October of 2018. And lastly, the EMSL report, which tested the tectum tiles by swabbing throughout the building, which took place in May of 2019. Excuse me, it's been a long night. It is clear from all three reports that many locations have multiple forms of mold. Although some levels are in the lowest category, it shows mold levels are present in the air, surfaces, and ceiling tectum tiles. Mold does not just go away without the right procedures. According to the EPA.gov website, molds gradually destroy the things they grow on. Mold will continue to grow until the steps are taken to eliminate the source of moisture and effectively deal with the mold problem. When the first 2 rounds of testing were completed and presented to the school committee, it was stated multiple times there are no guidelines for mold. Therefore, we were told the mold levels were fine for us to be there. The EMSL report states the mold levels were in the normal range. What is the guidelines the EMSL is using? We don't know that. The EMSL tectum tile testing conducted swab sampling. It's my understanding that they swabbed one small spot on a tile or location within a room or hallway. Some classrooms in pods 1 through 6 have approximately 118 tectum tiles within one classroom. You're talking of a 1-inch piece that they sampled within the classroom, or multiple within that, but it's a very small sampling. It's likely that another location of tile within the same room may have had a different outcome of more or less levels of mold. I can understand it's virtually impossible to test every square inch of every room. However, we could not ignore the fact that there is mold present in some classrooms. These rooms, no matter what the level of mold, should be a priority to clean, not just the kindergarten wing, throughout the whole building. There is mold allergy and mold illness. These occur after exposure to an interior environment of a water-damaged building. We are all well aware that Green Meadow has had years of water damage without proper protocols or cleanup to repair the damage. Exposure to mold can cause a variety of health effects on the human body. Different people react to mold exposure in different ways, but children and people with a compromised immune system are usually most vulnerable to the negative effects of mold. A person's reaction to mold depends on their sensitivity and overall health condition, the amount and type of mold present, and length of exposure. Mold can cause serious complications. The most common symptoms of mold exposure include respiratory problems, skin irritation, eye irritation, chronic fatigue, muscle pain, joint pain, ear infections, recurring colds, are just to name a few. Many of these symptoms were documented in Mike Cerici's report by staff members. Being ill from mold exposure takes away from the quality of life. I really do appreciate the follow-through last week, Dr. Girardi, in the school committee for approving to come in and test the tectum tiles. And furthermore, coming out a second time to collect more samples throughout the rest of the building. I am now asking the school committee and superintendent to please consider doing a proper cleaning in all areas identified of having any mold to try to avoid further health risks and prevent further damage to the building and materials. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick note, Tiffany. Michelle did say we do plan on the recommendations of the enzyme scrub, which is the proper cleaning, and even a sealer was recommended as well.
Correct. Could I come back up for a second, Ken? Thank you. And while I did hear that, I also heard that the classrooms that had levels of medium were going to be the ones identified.
I don't know.
No, that was for
Because the enzyme wash,
For the entire building?
Yeah.
Entire building.
What I recommended was,
Cleaning was for the entire building as
What I
So
recommend,
there's a lot of miscommunication from what we're told at Green Meadow then as to what we need to pack up and what rooms will be cleaned.
So.
We don't have that
So
yet.
I can actually clarify that because I actually sent out a letter to the union when they asked me a bunch of questions, and I responded very clearly with what the response was. So teachers who are moving, pack all of your stuff like you normally would. For when we went through with the cleaning company, we asked them to clean any open area that they had. So from ceiling to floor, if it was cleared off, then they would clean it. We're not requiring people to pack up their entire rooms. That is solely based on you. If there is a clear area for the cleaning company to clean, then they are going to clean it. So that choice lies on the teachers for what. We cannot require you to pack up your entire room.
Right.
So what we're saying is, if you feel that there's an area in your room or in your rooms that you want clean, then pack what you can to make that area clean.
So a couple different things is, one, we have not, and I say we meaning the paraprofessionals and the teachers, have not been told who is moving, who is not moving.
Well, I mean, what do you mean who is moving? So the teachers that were
displaced.
Have to would be packing up their rooms because we
There's
couldn't
some
say-
already located in classrooms.
Right, but again, we couldn't make a decision on if we were opening that wing until we got the vote tonight to work on that wing. So we can't notify people that you're moving if we don't know what the actual plan is until we get that vote tonight. So
and then the other
that's
piece
where-
is, the number of sections will dictate where people move to. So those are factors that once we have, now that, well, also after our meeting on Tuesday. Whatever day it was.
Tuesday.
We'll have, each piece of data helps us to make those decisions for you, so we're working on it.
So it's my understanding that we need to wait till those pieces fall in place to really determine who's moving, who's not moving, to what location. And it's up to the teacher's discretion if they'd like to pack up. Our pack-up day is tomorrow, because it's the only early release we have before the end of the school year. So if we don't know if our classroom is moving, and we get moved to a classroom where that teacher has decided not to fully pack up and it had already been cleaned, do you see where the dilemma might be?
I understand your dilemma, and again, our hands were tied until tonight. So I'm not.
I think it's best that everybody wants what's best for Green Meadow. I think everybody is going to do their best to pack, and I think people generally know the areas of concern. I would like to think that people do in their classrooms. So, my hope is everybody will pack as much as they can. We bought a lot of boxes to do that.
Teachers were told they were going to get 5. 10?
No, 10 if you're moving.
10 if you're moving, 5 if you're not.
We were asked by the principal to purchase 200 boxes. I purchased 300.
Thank you.
I can only do what I'm told when I'm told it. So, I mean.
We'll continue to work with you on it.
Thank you.
And it is as you can see, there are major decisions that had to happen. So a lot of, it's still a work in progress, but we're working together and we'll do what we can.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to pull together a couple statements that I heard, and just to understand. So you all took a vote tonight to renovate Green Meadow, and then I heard a statement, Dr. Girardi, that you made earlier about there being alternatives that were assessed. And I guess I'm trying to understand where that's coming from.
So we actually met with the Teachers Association because they had suggested that we consider alternative locations versus renovating the building.
Alternative locations meaning?
Well, so we defined that together. I asked them and they asked me, what are ideas of alternative location? One of them could have been that everybody stayed cramped in one side and we don't even use that wing. Another alternative location that could be considered would be doing split sessions in Fowler and not using the building. Other districts
when was that request made by the Teachers Association?
We had a meeting It was either a week ago or 2 weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago because it was before the previous school committee meeting, because I had to update the school committee on the request.
So in those 2 weeks, is that sounds like a delay in the plan to get work done in the school.
So in the meantime, one of the pieces that came up at the last meeting that kind of did delay it was the question about checking out the ceiling tiles that were discolored in that. Do I remember that correctly, Bob?
Correct.
And so that kind of put everything on a hold until we found out what the conditions of those were.
It
to
put
see
what on hold?
what our decision was going to be as far as, are we going to, renovate, use the 610 for that, or do the double sessions, that kind of scenario, or have all the kids on one side of the building. So that was the only delay, was that piece of it.
There's $610,000 that is waiting to be spent
Right.
to fix the school.
Yeah. Had
And
to
so
talk to
we
the
have a
union.
2-week delay?
We had to talk
I
to
think there was concern that the FinCom wouldn't want us to spend money on a building that wasn't going to be used next year.
Right.
I mean, why would you, as FinCom, why would you approve us putting in $100,000 worth of ceiling tiles in a building that may not be used next year? That was the concern. And we
Okay.
certainly want to be prudent in, in what we recommend to FinCom.
Yeah, so, and you all know that we have to have this spent by the end of July, by the end of
Absolutely.
June. And so 2 weeks can be ill-afforded, and to find this out at this meeting this evening is a little disheartening. So I guess where I'll go with that is, there can't be any delay in this, okay? The end of June comes, and the books close, and then we have 2 more weeks to vote on these things. And, I've heard various statements made that, that money goes back into free cash. And it does, at the end. It disappears. It's not like we can keep it and spend it. And so any work that's being done, any work that got delayed because we were sitting here talking about other alternatives, I would have really liked to have been part of that conversation, because I would have recommended very strongly not for there to be a delay while you're investigating that. But that's water under the bridge. When the money goes back to free cash, I don't know what the town meeting voters are going to do with that. I have no idea what's going to be presented. So I guess what I would say is, as you are sitting here considering your FY20 budget, okay, all right, there cannot be any spending on work that you don't have in your current budget. All right, that 610 goes away. You cannot rely on that being afforded in FY20. We have town meeting coming up in November. Maybe something goes forward then, maybe something doesn't. Even if it goes forward, I don't know what else the town meeting voters will be presented with. And so there can't be any spending on any work after the end of the fiscal year that is not in your all's current budget, okay? And so, all work has to be pushed forward. And so I appreciate the pressure that everybody's under, and I'm not trying to add any more, but to hear that there was a delay was a bit troubling, so.
To some degree, it was a legal matter and an obligation to the staff to make sure that we thoroughly investigated their concerns before we made that decision. But there were legal matters involved.
So I understand that, and there could have perhaps been some work done in parallel, rather than sitting here, saying, okay, we got to stop this until this decision has been made. But that wasn't something the Finance Committee was presented with.
Well, again, I think Michelle already has all the work charted out. From this point on, Michelle will be able.
I'll say
Yeah,
it
go ahead. I'm gonna
myself.
say the
I
same thing.
honestly felt that it was not in our best interest to continue putting money into a wing that was so contentious, that there were so many concerns about and so many decisions to be made, without having a clear idea that there were people moving back into that wing.
Oh, I agree.
consciously could not continue to spend the town of Maynard's money for a wing that people were not agreeing to move back into.
No,
That we did
I don't
the-
disagree with that statement or whatever. I guess what I'm saying is, whatever request went in, I understand the request, I understand there's legal, I understand there are legal implications with that request, okay? But now that was the Finance Committee afforded the opportunity to weigh in on that, and, make its recommendations, okay? So I appreciate what you're saying, okay? I understand that everybody's working under time pressures, but this money goes away, and I'm hearing people say, well, then it goes back in free cash, and then we can make another request. One, I don't know whether there'll be certified free cash, and I don't know what the town meeting voters will do with that, and that's all I'm going to say.
I don't think anybody made that comment.
But that's all right. And I agree with
We
you.
all
We
understand
have to
the
get it done.
urgency.
It has to be done quickly. Fortunately, you did give us direction that you see investing in that building. At the last FinCom meeting I was able to attend, I heard loud and clear from FinCom that we should try to renovate that building. And Michelle has done a good job of creating that spreadsheet of all that, how we're going to spend that money. So we do know how it's going to be done, and now we have to do it very quickly. And I agree with you. It has to get done. We don't want to waste it, and we don't want to lose it.
Okay.
It has to be invested in the building, so thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I guess mention how strong our band program is, our music program here in Maynard is a source of pride in the community and the schools. Kids perform all over town throughout the year. I was here recently while they were performing with the Council of Aging, just a really well-run program, it's well-regarded, long history, and I understand difficult cuts have to be made under difficult circumstances. I just wanted to kind of be on record that we were initially told that the band program was not something that was going to suffer because of this cut. It was going to be strings and chorus. And there were some last-minute changes to the kids' schedules, and we've since found out that the amount of instructional time that they'll be getting has been cut in half. Administration's been very responsive in trying to look at solutions to this problem, but I am concerned that if those solutions can't be followed through on, that something that's going so well here in our district is going to suffer and could potentially become something that isn't something that we're known for. I personally know of families who are choosing to stay here next year because of this program, and I'd hate to see our district lose more kids. So anyway, I just wanted that to be on the record, and it doesn't need to be a long discussion, but
Yeah, and I'll just add that after you met with Jennifer today, I met with her as well.
Oh, great.
And she
Thank
did
you.
say they're going to relook at those schedules.
Good.
She did hear your concerns, so
yes.
I know that they're looking at it and trying to resolve that problem for
Okay.
you. And then I had a conversation with Bonnie as well about that, and where the emphasis is. And the long-term plan is actually to, create an even better program and to develop it. I mean, we have great staff, we want to excite them, and we do have a pathway plan that's going to include TV, radio production, and music, and combine them for STEAM. So we want to build that program.
And I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I think everybody here values it, and
Yeah.
I know that that's something that's very important. But I've seen so many positions get cut over the years, and they don't come back, and I think that's where my concern is. And
Of
I know that
course.
you're in a tough spot financially, but
Yeah.
just need to voice
Yeah,
concerns
and I just
over
know
it.
she's working on it after meeting with you, so.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Renee.
So I wanted to echo some of what Renee just said, and also just mention that this was never actually even, parents were not notified of this change, right? It was sold as the strings program was going to move to after school. We were going to lose chorus at Fowler. Excuse me. But we were not notified that the whole instrumental program, essentially instruction, was being cut in half, right? So, and it still haven't been informed. So as a parent of a sixth grader, I got a schedule that came home on Friday that didn't include, I didn't even know to look, right? She's just entering middle school. I didn't even know to look for that instrumental music time. And it wasn't on there, and there was no letter that went home to parents. There was no notification. And I'm a parent who's paying attention to what's going on in the schools, and so the fact that I didn't even realize it till another parent alerted me is really concerning. I mean, this is a significant change to our instructional programming in the district, and like Renee said, something the district is known for that we're really proud of, that we want to continue to encourage. It's a pathway we've identified through the high school, and to really cut it off at the knees at the middle school level to me is irresponsible, especially without a greater community conversation. So I'm really frustrated by that. I'm really frustrated by the lack of communication from the schools and from the school district around that significant change in programming. And I also just want to mention that, I mean, it feels like the schedule at Fowler, and it may be all of our buildings, gets redone every year, which feels like we're reinventing the wheel. And I understand that it's a small district, and so when you make one small change, it can have a significant impact on the schedule. I just want us to consider, how do we build a schedule for the long term? How do we have scheduling committees where we've got everyone around the table so we can talk about what is the best way to deliver services, and that we can be proactive in our scheduling and proactive in our communication to families, so that we don't have people finding out through the grapevine when their kid's schedule comes home of this significant change without some bigger conversation around it. And so that we can, I hear you that, we want to be able to restore the programming for instrumental music, but saying it and putting it on paper and having an actual plan in place are two very different things. And given what we've seen around planning and follow through recently, it's hard to believe that this will actually happen in the future. So those are a few things I just wanted to mention and I want us to look at.
Thank you. Leslie, just so you know, we weren't notified either.
Hi, Natasha Rivera. I just wanted to echo the same sentiments that were raised about the music program at Fowler and the significant impact that has on the grade. Similarly, as a parent who has a child who is part of the band, came home and, being notified by looking at a class schedule, which wasn't actually obvious to me at first, because there were so many other things that you're kind of digesting, and then kind of realizing, whoa, what's missing here? I think that was a really inappropriate way to slide in such a significant change that maybe should have been part of a broader conversation with families to give notification. I mean, we've had conversations about changes to music program to the Green Meadow, the strings program, and there were reassurances that further cuts to music would not be happening. So to find out this way, very disappointing is probably understating that in a very great way. I'm very appreciative of the leadership and the efforts that the principals at Fowler have done in trying to come up with a schedule. I hope this is a good schedule. I mean, every year I feel like we're having this schedule conversation. Clearly, transitions for kids, this is very hard every year. We're revisiting. So as a goal, I think, if we have faith in our leadership at the schools, then we need to really think about how we can best revise this for a long term as well. But just echoing the same disappointment, I've received feedback personally. I personally have been affected, but there's many in the community who are upset how this was executed and lack of communication. Anyway, besides that, I wanted to take a moment. Oh, did Michelle leave?
She just left.
She just left.
Okay, so I wanted to actually take a moment to thank Michelle for her efforts. I think she's done tremendous work, and I've seen her at FinCom, Board of Selectmen, putting in extraordinary hours, working as much as she can with union, all areas, stakeholders within the town, to try to satisfy so many people in so many different ways. And I know it's a hard thing for her, but I wanted to take a moment to recognize that I know she's doing the best she can, and I just appreciate the work that she's doing for our town and our schools. And just to highlight, although she probably doesn't feel that way always, but I know she's, because of her work ethic, she's losing sleep over how to make this all work, and her concern is very much evident. I appreciate her transparency and getting the information out. In any ways that we can better support her, Dr. Girardi, I think that we need to make sure whether it's getting her answers when she needs them or whatever, how she can, get the finance pieces together. I just want to make sure that we're being responsive to the timelines that she has, and just, again, to sing her praises for a moment. I also wanted to take a moment to thank the teachers and the paras and the participation that they've had for recent school committee meetings. I know it's been great to have the feedback directly from the teachers. Even this evening, Katie highlighting the need to be sensitive to the K students as they're going into first. That was really great to hear directly from a teacher's perspective, something that maybe a year ago we would not have heard directly right away, to understand the impact and the decision-making. And so it's the engagement piece has really been great to see in the past year. It's hard how it came about through the issues, but it's been good to see that they have been engaged in coming to the school committee meetings and sharing the feedback that they have. So I just wanted to thank you all for doing that. So that's it.
Hello. So I'd like to preface this by saying that it takes a lot of work to get me out of that chair. And I've sat through a lot of these meetings, and I've never spoken during citizens' comments. But this is one of the things that I can't not speak about. So I've gone through Fowler, and band is very important to a lot of people. It's kind of one of the only things to look forward to during the school days. So it's just, in my eyes, not an option to cut.
Thank you, Pat. Pat, I do remember you and AJ saying that is our music program is one of the things that really sets us apart. So appreciate that comment.
Just two quick things to add. First of all, I really appreciate that we have the Fowler schedule this early, so that we can review it. So I am grateful to Principal Barth for getting that together, so that we have this time to look at it, and we're not making these changes after Labor Day as we were doing last year. So thank you to him for all the work that he did to build that. I'm grateful. And the other thing I just want to mention is that we can still make this right in some ways. I mean, it's not going to be great, but we can still make this right, especially in terms of the communication piece. I mean, we still have families who are right now considering signing up for band. I want to make sure that we're being transparent, that they know that their kid isn't going to get direct instrumental instruction next year, and that if they want their kid to actually learn how to play the instrument, they're going to have to pay for private lessons, which creates inequity. I mean, it's not what we want to see in our district, but I at least want to let parents know up front that what your kid will experience as a new player in 4th or 5th grade next year won't be what other kids have experienced. Yep. And where I feel like we're just singing the same chorus over and over, where the communication has been lacking in the past, I want to make sure that we are trying to make that right in this situation, so we can proactively communicate with families about what they can expect for next year. So I just wanted to mention that hopefully we can encourage that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good. Good.
Just want to let you know I sent a couple of you 2 different versions of mold enzyme foggers. Just listen to the conversation. I know we talked about it briefly, but if there's a challenge in getting all of the rooms cleaned out or the stuff moved out, I should be more specific, those fogging units are locally available and could certainly help in that. They also work well in ducts, mechanical spaces, and for an average classroom, it costs $21.97.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move to member comments. Oh, sorry, Katie.
Really fast. We still
Go
have
ahead.
executive session.
Just a
to close.
suggestion when thinking about the cost, and I know we're tight on janitor staff and things might need to be moved in Green Meadow. An option might be, we've used them in the past, especially when school is not in session, those 2-week periods, the prisoners.
Good thought.
Because they're like 25 cents, I believe, an hour.
Oh my gosh, you don't even pay them. I used them for the food pantry. They were phenomenal.
Yes, they've
I have
moved
their
us in the
contact.
past, but
Bob,
it's just a thought.
Brilliant. I have their contact.
And I asked Michelle, she wasn't sure if she could send it, but what she said about what a deep clean looked like really needs to be relayed to the Green Meadow staff. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Great idea. Great thought.
Okay, Katie obviously didn't trust I was going to come up and tell you this myself, because I told her I was going to make those comments. So now I don't have to make those comments, but I do want to say that I do think we're moving in the right direction. I know I've usually come up here and complained, and so this time I want to say the fact that we're doing the enzyme wash in all the rooms, that we're talking about fogging all the rooms, and we're talking about doing a deep clean in all the rooms is a major improvement and should go a long way to restoring some of the trust that has been lost. And I wanted to make sure that I came up and made a positive statement as well. So I'm not always looking for the
No,
negative.
You have good constructive thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Appreciate them. Yeah.
That is really good to hear, though, from your perspective, that is really good to
Yeah.
hear.
Definitely. Okay. Member comments?
I know that the teachers are, or the K teachers, their stuff is in pods and that there isn't anyone to help them. Is that something that we could do, maybe a parent sign up to help take
Well,
the
it's happening
furniture?
tomorrow, so what we
Oh.
decided to do, so originally, again, best laid plans, right? Principal Shea said, why don't we just pull everything out, it would be a lot easier for the teachers. Unfortunately, it's graduation day. So, so the custodians from the other buildings, because we were gonna bring custodians over, couldn't come over and help. But we will have the custodians there. Michelle and I are going there, and originally, they were talking about pulling it out while the teachers were there, so that they could, if a teacher said, that's my table, put a sticky on it, pull that out, what's behind it? Because they're not that deep. So that was kind of the plan. But I think Michelle and I are going to go there early to try and get more of it out earlier. But we're doing what we can in getting as many people to help. And I know Jennifer was thinking about getting some parent help, but I don't know if that went out. But I do know that we are personally going to be there to help out and try to get stuff out earlier so that when the teachers are ready, there will be stuff out.
Okay.
I just had a question about, sorry, are you done?
I think so.
I'm sorry. I didn't. I had a question about the Green Meadow principal search. So where are we now?
So,
Sorry, tricky
I
question.
want to get that done as soon as possible. Obviously, we heard that, but we also, especially the principals and I, Dan is working on that with Charles. We have, we've lost a lot of candidates. So we were down to one that I already interviewed this week. And I'm going back to the screening committee because they had suggested that maybe we consider an interim.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask.
And so I'm open to anything. I like to have choices. I really prefer when a screening committee can give me 3 people to consider. So I think we're going to meet early next week with the screening committee to share with them where we're at right now and figure out how to move forward. My concern is that there's this need to get everything done at Green Meadow as soon as possible, and then there's a need to get it done right, and we want to do it right, but we also want to get things done quickly. And that's the balancing act we're dealing with right now. So there isn't an easy answer, but we're working on it, and we're working with the screening committee.
Okay. And maybe the thought of going back out again?
Right, but then that's going to take,
Right.
the concern is that's going to delay the process when we really need boots on the ground right away, especially administrators who will be there in the summer, who can help out and help make sure that all these timelines are being done. The sooner we get somebody on board, the better, and that's the concern.
Yeah, and at the same time, if you don't have the right person there at this point, I mean, that's a big concern. Yeah. I mean, because then we're committed to that, but we've seen this, we're committed to that person.
How difficult is it to get an interim principal?
Well,
I mean, you hear about an interim superintendent or, other positions, but
there are
not.
retirees out there, and in fact, one of the search committee members recommended I meet somebody.
Oh, okay.
And I already have.
Okay.
I already
So
met
it's a
one
possibility.
potential interim, but I also don't want to subvert the process to any degree either, which is why I want to go back to the screening committee and say, one of your members recommended I talk to somebody, I talked to somebody, but I don't want to subvert the process either.
Why can't
So
we do it
if
at the
that's a
same
serious
time?
consideration, then maybe, we consider whether we, bring in a potential interim to meet with teachers and, to go through the same process, which will delay it a little bit, but not as much.
Right, okay.
So it's up in the air, but we're working on it,
Okay.
is the answer.
Next one. I didn't make notes, so I'm going to go off the top of my head about two things, and then I'll be done for tonight. One is I
You still have
did.
executive session, you're not done.
I know we're not done. I'm going to be done speaking. I went to with Chloe, my daughter and I went to Godspell, and we saw Patrick afterwards. And it was just, I don't know. That's just, I think we need to celebrate things that are just awesome too in Maynard amidst everything else. And it's just, I love being able to see all that's going on and be a part of that and celebrate that. And that was a great example. And it's just been really cool to see what's happening up there. I think a lot of people, we got to get the word out more because people didn't realize that there's another show. They're doing another show. Holiday weekend too, that's right. Anyway, so that was one thing. And then the other was that we did have curriculum subcommittee meeting today. I'm sure Mauro might have something to say about that. The first part was meeting with the MMA and understanding concerns, very recent concerns that have come up. Bonnie and Renee were representing the MMA. And so we are now informed and share the significant concerns around where things are at and where we're going. And so we will be sure to be following up and checking in, and we know that you're doing, everyone has those same intentions and concerns, so we appreciate that the administration is taking this so seriously. But it's been very important. The other thing that we did talk about was the strategic plan in relation to curriculum and how we can make sure moving forward that is really being considered and shared and communicated with everybody. So how are you doing that? How are you then looking at making sure that my school council, everything's aligning, that our goals are aligning so that we all together are aligning at each level, and you pick out what makes sense to you within this larger goals. That's going to be the thing that makes the most sense, and most likely most anything does fit into these larger domains. It's just a matter of how you're framing it and which pieces you're looking at, and then what you're, it just might be how you're particularly approaching it based on the larger goals. But then we're aligned, and then we're focused, and we all work together, and we're empowered together at each spot, and then come back and return to the school committee, and we get to talk about that. So I'm looking forward to, we've been working to schedule the trainings this summer for the school committee to continue the thread of really talking about strategic planning and really doing a deeper dive with new members too of what we do in our role to help support that. So anyways, I think that's it. I talked plenty, more than I meant to. Go.
The senior walk happened today at the schools, which I saw a video of the seniors in their caps and gowns walking through, going into Green Meadow, which was fantastic. Yeah. And I just think it's such a great tradition.
That was started only a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and it's
which
really
is
nice.
so awesome. And, the little kids high-fiving and stuff is so cute.
I had the kids knock on my door when they came so I could come out, and I actually showed the intro. That was a source of pride for me to say, hey, look at this.
Nice. And the other thing is we had a CPAC administration joint meeting last week?
It was last week.
Last week. And we talked about lots of different things, but the biggest takeaway, I think, was that we all figured out setting up subcommittees so that some actual work can get done to work towards making some real strides with communication and safety and inclusion and things like that. So that was great, that, assigning names and being able to do that. So that was awesome. And that's all I have. So.
I do want to thank you, Mauro, because people sitting here have been doing a lot of work. I know that you've been really doing a lot of in-between communication as chair with all the different, everything that we've been talking about tonight. You've been involved with in some way to try to ensure that we are getting what we need to, and we're moving forward and having a bunch of meetings, and so we appreciate that. I just want to mention that because she's just new to being chair. Thank you. Doing a lot of work.
Okay. So now we're going to end our open session and move into our executive session, Mass General Law, I don't know what CH is. Chapter, thank you. Chapter 30A, Section 21-2, and we will not be returning to open meeting. Thank you, everybody.